Chapter 3169. The power of a peak imperishable realm expert. Self-destruction was terrifying. The entire fighting arena was caught in the crossfire. So close. Looking at Qin Feiyang, who was safe and sound behind him, the old man in red couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Everything else didn't matter, as long as this kid was fine. In the distance, Zhao Xiaojin and the others were also sweating cold sweat. They didn't expect that Feng Wanjian and his companion would choose to self-destruct without hesitation. Fortunately, there was an elder here, otherwise everyone would have to be buried together with them. Following closely, everyone looked at Qin Feiyang, their eyes no longer filled with disdain but with awe. 6 types of law power. This was equivalent to obtaining a pass to step into the peak dominator realm. Perhaps from now on, this person would become the number 1 person in the Hall of Fame. The number 1 monster was no longer Yi Tian. Terrifying. What kind of monster was this? Great accomplishment. Imperishable realm actually comprehended 6 types of law. What was even more outrageous was that the law of thunder had already comprehended the 4th profound, and the law of slaughter had already comprehended the 3rd profound. To think that they usually boasted of being geniuses, compared to this person, they couldn't even be considered idiots. The old man in red waved his hand, and the aura of Feng Wanjian and his companion's self-destruction quickly calmed down. You weren't scared, right? He turned to look at Qin Feiyang and asked. His attitude was no longer as cold as before, and even had a hint of flattery. Not bad. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. The old man in red sized up Qin Feiyang with a strange expression. Not bad. Looking at his calm expression, it was as if he hadn't self-destructed. Not only was his talent outstanding, even his temperament was so astonishing. If this kid didn't die prematurely, he would definitely have amazing achievements in the future. Qin Feiyang didn't say anything more on this issue and scanned the fighting arena. He was looking for the Sky Demon Spear. The Sky Demon Spear was a peak-level heaven-defying divine artifact. The self-destruction of the two couldn't damage it. Soon. His eyes lit up as he found the Sky Demon Spear in a pit not far away. Immediately, he took a step forward and landed beside the pit. With a wave of his hand, the Sky Demon Spear landed in his hand. The Sky Demon Spear struggled to leave. Qin Feiyang's eyes turned cold as he shouted. If you don't want your soul to be destroyed, then behave yourself. The Tianma Spear trembled slightly and stopped struggling. There will be benefits for you if you follow me. Qin Feiyang said in a low voice. He dripped his blood on the spear to claim ownership, and sent it to the Black Tortoise world. Following closely, he scanned the arena again. Zhang Santian should also have a heaven-defying divine artifact. As expected. Soon he found another black saber nearby. Qin Feiyang stepped forward and grabbed the black saber. After examining it for a while, he nodded and said with a smile. Not bad, a mid-level heaven-defying divine artifact. Perhaps in the eyes of people like Yi Tian, a mid-level heaven-defying divine artifact was nothing, but to Qin Feiyang, even a low-level heaven-defying divine artifact was of great value. Because he had the Black Tortoise realm, even if it was a low-grade heaven-defying divine artifact, when it entered the Black Tortoise world's origin land, it could be upgraded to a peak-grade heaven-defying divine artifact. Similarly, he also had an ambition. That was every person in the Devil's Land was equipped with a supreme-grade heaven-defying divine artifact. For example, the 54 war generals. Their strength was not weak to begin with. If they were equipped with a heaven-defying divine artifact, it would undoubtedly be like adding wings to a tiger. Moreover, the supreme-grade heaven-defying divine artifact was the strongest divine artifact under the sovereign divine weapon. If in the future, everyone had a supreme-grade divine artifact, coupled with the ancient castle and his slaughter domain, who would be their opponent in the entire Sky Cloud realm, they could walk sideways. So, no matter what level of heaven-defying divine artifact it was, as long as there was a chance to get it, he would take it all. To this, the red-clothed old man had no objections. After all, Feng Wanjian and Yi Tian were defeated by this person. Naturally, their heaven-defying divine artifact should belong to this person. Qin Feiyang put away the 7-star rod, and turned to walk in front of the red-clothed old man. He cupped his hands and said, I'm sorry to have caused you so much trouble. It's fine, it's fine. The red-clothed old man waved his hand and smiled. Then let's go out. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. The two immediately turned and flew towards the space-time crack. The crowd gathered around the space-time crack hurriedly retreated to the side. It seemed that even Zhao Xiaojin did not dare to get close to the two. What are you doing? Let's go. Qin Feiyang walked to the front of the high platform and turned to look at Zhao Xiaojin. Okay. Zhao Xiaojin quickly nodded and ran forward. Immediately, the two followed behind the red-clothed old man and left the fighting arena. When they returned to the square of the Deacon Hall, the red-clothed old man smiled and said, "Go back quickly. This old man has high hopes for you. Work hard." Yes. The two respectfully responded and turned to leave. Evildoer, evildoer. No, this matter must be told to Big Brother and Deputy Chief as soon as possible and protect this child as soon as possible. Otherwise, once the people of the Devil Palace know, they will definitely send someone to kill him. The red-clothed old man muttered and flew away like lightning. The other disciples also quickly returned from the fighting arena. Immediately, the news that Qin Feiyang had mastered 6 types of law power and forced Feng Wanjian and Yi Tian to self-destruct spread wildly in the Hall of the Exalted. No way. Mo Yuan has mastered 6 types of law power? Are you kidding me? What is his cultivation level? How can he comprehend so many types of law power? If he really has mastered 6 types of law power, I will chop off my head and let you sit on it. He really doesn't know how to brag. Everyone's first reaction was to not believe it because it was too unbelievable. A great achievement undead stage comprehending 6 types of law power? He was simply talking in his sleep. But when they received confirmation, their hearts were filled with shock. At the same time, in the assembly hall of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, this was the sacred place of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Only those above the elder level were qualified to enter. At this moment, the deputy chief, the white-robed old man, and the 9 elders gathered together. The white-robed old man looked at the red-clothed old man standing in the middle and asked suspiciously, "Qiyan, what's the matter? Why did you call us all here?" Qiyan was the name of the red-clothed old man. "Big brother, something big happened." Qiyan's face was full of excitement. "Something big?" The big shots looked at each other and looked at him with a puzzled face. "Big brother, deputy chief, elders, do you know what kind of genius appeared in our Rogue Cultivator Alliance?" The more Qiyan spoke, the more excited he became. He was almost incoherent. Genius? The big shots were stunned. They naturally knew about the geniuses of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Was there a need to be so excited? It's different this time. Have you seen a great achievement undead stage comprehending 6 types of law power? Qiyan said. Great achievement undead stage? 6 types of law power? Qiyan, you're not dreaming, right? One of the elders shook his head and laughed. Qiyan did not answer. He just quietly watched the reaction of the big shots. Sure enough, no one present believed it. Even his big brother, the Hall of Famers, only took it as a joke. No. This is not a dream. This is real. I saw it with my own eyes. Qiyan said word by word as if he had been injected with chicken blood. What? Saw it with your own eyes? Immediately, the big shots were shocked and hurriedly asked, "Who is it? Why don't we know?" "It's so close." Qiyan smiled mysteriously. The big shots were stunned. The deputy leader looked at Qiyan and said, "You're not talking about yourself, are you?" Qiyan looked at the deputy leader in shock and said with a wry smile, "My lord, I'm not a great achievement undead stage. How could I be talking about myself?" The deputy leader smiled awkwardly, then said with a dark face, "Don't be mysterious, tell me, who is it?" "He's in our Hall of Fame." "And he just entered the Hall of Fame," Qiyan said. "In our Hall of Fame? And he just came in?" The big shots looked at each other. The deputy leader asked, "Are you talking about Zhao Xiaojin?" No. Zhao Xiaojin comprehended the 3rd profound of the law of light at such a young age. His talent is outstanding, but compared to this person, it's not worth mentioning. Qiyan shook his head. "It's not Zhao Xiaojin," the deputy leader murmured, then frowned and asked, "You mean Mo Yuan? Because only Zhao Xiaojin and Mo Yuanyuan had just entered the Hall of Fame. That's right. It's him. Qi Yan nodded. Impossible. The deputy leader shook his head and said, I heard from Elder Ing in the East City that although Mo Yuanyuan is talented, he only mastered the law of thunder and the law of war. These are all things we knew before, but there are still many things we don't know about him. Moreover, even in the past he didn't reveal his true strength. Because he has already comprehended the fourth profound of the law of thunder, Qi Yan said. What? The fourth profound? The big shots were shocked. To comprehend the fourth profound of the law of thunder at the greater imperishable stage, this kind of comprehension was too terrifying. The 6 types of law powers he has mastered are the law of thunder, the law of war, the law of light, the law of wind, the law of force, and the law of massacre. Among them, the law of thunder has comprehended the fourth profound. The law of massacre has comprehended the third profound. The law of war is needless to say, right? Before the assessment, he had already shown it to Elder Ing. It's the second profound. Think about it, in the sky cloud realm, how many people have achieved such an achievement at the greater imperishable stage? If this isn't a monster, then what is? Qi Yan was extremely excited. Are you sure? The white-robed old man asked. Of course I'm sure. Just a while ago, Feng Wanjian and Zhang Santian challenged him. I saw them enter the arena with my own eyes. Not only me, but many disciples also saw it with their own eyes. It must have spread in the Hall of Fame by now. Qi Yan said. Feng Wanjian and Zhang Santian, they really can't stop. The white-robed old man frowned. Although they were both at the great perfection imperishable stage, and had comprehended the third profound, they were forced to self-destruct by Mo Wuji in the arena just now. Qi Yan said. Self-destruct? The white-robed old man was stunned. Yes. They have already self-destructed and died. Qi Yan nodded. Such a big matter. Why didn't you stop them? There was a trace of anger in the white-robed old man's eyes. My dear brother, I also wanted to stop them, but this was a life-and-death duel they proposed. Let's talk about it later. If I had stepped in at that time, it would have definitely aroused Mo Wuji's dissatisfaction. Earlier, the matter of Zhao Xiaojin's parents should have made them very disappointed in our rogue cultivator alliance. If I had stepped in and made Mo Wuji completely disappointed in our rogue cultivator alliance, what would we do if he took Zhao Xiaojin and left the rogue cultivator alliance? If such a peerless genius really left the rogue cultivator alliance, it would be our loss. Qi Yan sighed. You did the right thing. Compared to Mo Wuji, Feng Wanjian and Zhang Santian are worthless. The vice leader nodded. Chapter 3170. After all, Feng Wanjian is the eldest grandson of the 10th elder. One of the elders said. The 10th elder? Have you forgotten that he has been dethroned from his position as an elder? He's just an ordinary member now. The deputy leader glanced at the elder. This? The elder's expression froze and he shook his head without saying anything. The deputy leader looked at the white-robed elder and smiled. Mo Yuanyuan is a true monster. Do you think we should treat him this way? This person. I want to take him as my last disciple, the white-robed elder said with a smile. Shameless. The deputy leader cursed in his heart. But he might not agree. The white-robed elder glanced at the deputy leader and said unhappily, You old thing, can you stop beating around the bush? Okay. Then we'll compete fairly. The deputy leader nodded. Let's compete. Who's afraid of who? The white-robed elder snorted. Qi Yan and the other elders looked at the two of them. Obviously, both of them wanted to take him in as a disciple. Who wouldn't be tempted by such a genius? You two, we can take our time to take him in as a disciple, but we must protect him first. Qi Yan said. That's right. Pass down my order immediately. The entire Hall of the Exalted and all disciples are not allowed to leak Mo Yuanyuan's matter. Those who violate this order will have their entire family wiped out. The deputy leader shouted. Yes. Qi Yan nodded. The deputy leader asked. Also, who is he living with now? With your grandson Yi Tian. Qi Yan smiled. So he's living in Sky Peak? Tianer has never allowed anyone to enter Sky Peak. Now that he's living there, it seems that they have a good relationship. The Vice Alliance leader chuckled. Just because they have a good relationship doesn't mean that you can enjoy the benefits of a favorable position, the white-robed elder said faintly. Let's wait and see then. The deputy leader smiled provocatively and looked at Qi Yan. Since he's living in Sky Peak, we don't have to worry about his safety. But just in case, you have to be more careful in the future. Understood. You want me to protect him secretly? Qi Yan nodded. The deputy leader smiled. Yes, we must let him grow up smoothly. It might not be a good thing if things go too smoothly. There's an old saying that the flowers in the greenhouse are only pretty, but they can't withstand the ravages of wind and frost. The white-robed old man said indifferently. That can't be generalized. Mo Yuan grew up in the outside world. For him to be able to cultivate to the large success imperishable realm, and comprehend so many laws, could it be that he relied on luck? Don't underestimate young people nowadays. They are stronger and more independent than you think, the vice leader said. This old man is just reminding you. You don't have to take it to heart, the white-robed old man said. You guys chat first. I'll go back and issue a gag order. Qi Yan helplessly looked at the two people who were at each other's throats, then turned around and left the hall. The 9 elders were also very tactful. They stood up and left one after another. In fact, they also had the intention of taking in disciples. In terms of strength and status, they were also the pinnacle of the Eastern continent. However, in the face of the Vice Alliance leader and the Hall of Famers, these two super powerhouses, they paled in comparison. It was best not to get involved in this excitement, so as to avoid making things worse and offending these two people, and the gains would not make up for the losses. Seeing everyone leave, the white-robed old man said with a smile, Old man Yi, they're all gone. Let's have a peaceful discussion. Sure. The vice leader nodded. Look, you already have Yi Tian. If you can nurture Yi Tian, it will be a great contribution to our Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Why do you still want to snatch Mo Yuan from this old man? When the time comes, you will have to nurture both Yi Tian and Mo Yuan. How will you have time to manage the other affairs of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance? So leave the task of nurturing Mo Yuan to this old man. You're already a pile of old bones. Don't always work so hard. Just looking at you makes my heart ache. The white-robed old man said with a smile. It sounded like he was affectionate and righteous. Then shouldn't I thank you? The vice leader was a little dumbfounded. There's no need to thank me. After all, we're nurturing talents for the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. The white-robed old man chuckled. Get lost. The vice leader's face darkened. He snorted coldly and said, I really didn't realize that you were so kind. Besides, I'm afraid that you'll mislead others. I'll mislead others? Old man Yi, you have to make yourself clear. How am I misleading others? The white-robed old man turned hostile on the spot. What kind of disciple can you teach with your personality that only knows how to hide all day long? I'm really worried that if I hand Mo Yuan to you, he will become like you. The vice leader sneered. So there's no room for discussion? The white-robed old man frowned. Yes. There's no room for discussion. The vice leader nodded. Fine, let's wait and see. The white-robed old man suddenly stood up. He glared at the vice leader and turned to leave. Let's wait and see. Do you think I'm afraid of you? The vice leader's face was full of disdain. Then his eyes flickered. With such amazing talent, if Tian could get his support, then wouldn't Tian naturally succeed the position of the next leader in the future? Wait a minute. Would he support Tian? Would he have the same ambition as himself? Don't wait until he becomes Tian's opponent in the future. No. This matter has to be confirmed first. Otherwise, it will be a potential threat to Tian. The vice leader muttered and immediately got up to leave the meeting hall. The Hall of the Exalted. All disciples of the Hall of the Exalted, listen up. The vice leader has personally ordered that no information about Mo Yuan is leaked to the outside world. Those who violate the order will have their entire family annihilated. Qi Yan's voice rang above the Hall of the Exalted, clearly reaching every disciple. Annihilation of the entire family. This is the strictest blockade order in the history of our Rogue Cultivator Alliance. You can see how important Mo Yuan is to the higher-ups. The hundreds of thousands of disciples were in awe. A few bold disciples looked at Qi Yan and asked, "Elder, what about our family members? Can't we tell them?" "That's right. Even the people in the Alliance capital have to be kept a secret." All in all, only the Hall of the Exalted and the higher-ups know about this. Don't take any chances. The vice leader is serious this time. If this is leaked, even the descendants of the elders can't escape death. Qi Yan warned seriously. Understood. Everyone nodded. Heavenly Peak. Qin Feiyang and Zhao Xiaojin had also heard Qi Yan's voice. All of this was not beyond Qin Feiyang's expectations, because if it were him, he would have done the same. After all, there was still the Devil Hall eyeing him covetously. Wait a minute. The Devil Hall. Did Elder Hua and the others know that he was Mo Yuan? Zhao Xiaojin retracted his gaze and looked at Qin Feiyang, who was deep in thought. He pursed his lips and said, "You're now the most popular person in our Rogue Cultivator Alliance." Most popular person? Qin Feiyang was stunned. When he came back to his senses, he smiled and said, "Isn't this to get close to the vice leader?" "So, if it wasn't to get close to the vice leader, you would continue to hide the power of law?" Zhao Xiaojin asked secretly. "Of course. I'm a low-key person." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Low-key? I really can't tell." Zhao Xiaojin pursed his lips. This bastard was too much of a blow to her. Not only had he comprehended the fourth profundity of the law of thunder, the third profundity of the law of slaughter, and the second profundity of the law of war, but he had also grasped the law of force, the law of wind, and the law of light. Not to mention her, even the number one monster of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, Big Brother Yi Tian, paled in comparison to this bastard. Zhao Xiaojin suddenly asked, "How many profundities have you comprehended for the other power of law?" Cough cough. "About that. I've only just grasped the basics of the law of wind, the law of light, and the law of force." Qin Feiyang smiled. Zhao Xiaojin sized up Qin Feiyang and frowned. "Why do I feel like you're lying to me? Would I lie to you?" Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. "Haven't you lied to me enough? Anyway, I won't believe anything you say now. There's also Madman Mo. Does he also control 6 types of laws like you?" Zhao Xiaojin asked secretly. "Him. More or less." Qin Feiyang smiled vaguely. "Fuck. What kind of monsters are you?" Zhao Xiaojin could not help but curse. With that, she turned around and entered the cave abode. She had to work hard. Otherwise, when she walked with this guy in the future, others would point at her behind her back and say that she was selling her beauty to please him. Following these monsters was really stressful. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. He also returned to the cave abode and sat in the hall. He brewed a pot of tea and drank it while waiting. Soon, a white figure walked into the cave abode. Qin Feiyang turned his head to take a look, and his expression immediately froze. "Yi Tian? Wasn't this person in seclusion?" "Looking at your expression, I know that you must be wondering why a person in seclusion would suddenly come out to look for you." Yi Tian walked to the opposite side of Qin Feiyang and sat down on the chair. He looked at Qin Feiyang with displeasure. Cough cough. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly and laughed. "Brother Yi, I don't think I have offended you. You didn't offend me, but you hid it from me. I feel a little uncomfortable. I treat you like a brother, but you actually hid it from me. If it wasn't for my grandfather sending me messages and waking me up to tell me these things, I don't know how long you would have kept me in the dark." Yi Tian snorted. "Drink some tea and calm down." Qin Feiyang poured a cup of tea and handed it to Yi Tian. Yi Tian took the teacup and smelled the heavenly immortal dew. He immediately smiled and said, "For the sake of this tea, I'll forgive you." Haha. Qin Feiyang could not help but laugh. For a person who loved tea, there was nothing that a cup of good tea could not solve. Yi Tian took a sip and sighed. "From now on, I'll have to give you the title of the number one monster in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance." "Don't. I'm not interested in this at all. I revealed my strength purely because I don't want anyone to cause trouble for me and Zhao Xiaojin anymore." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "That's what you think, but others don't. Now many people in the Hall of the Exalted are talking behind your back. You're competing with me for the #1 title. Of course I don't care. The #1 title is just a chew. I'm just afraid that these discussions will affect our relationship. Yi Tian said. It doesn't exist. You're all straightforward people. It's fine as long as there's no barrier between us. As for the discussions behind our backs, let them be. Anyway, their mouths are on their bodies. We can't do anything about it, right? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. I'm impressed. Yi Tian gave him a thumbs up. Chapter 3171. You also make me admire you. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Me. Yi Tian was slightly stunned, shook his head and said, Haven't you heard about the matter between me and Qin Feiyang? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Back then, in order to force him to make a move, I personally killed a newborn baby. A person like me is not worthy of your admiration at all. Yi Tian shook his head. But I can see that you don't feel good about this matter. I think you must have your own difficulties. Qin Feiyang said. Difficulties? Yi Tian murmured, shook his head and said, What I did is what I did. Even if I have difficulties, I can't deny my sins. Qin Feiyang was silent. From Yi Tian's words, it was not difficult to judge that he was indeed forced to kill the baby in Wuxia City. As for the person who forced him behind the scenes, there was no doubt that it must be the deputy leader. The more he thought about it, the stranger he felt. Just because he killed Wang Hui, the deputy leader was so unscrupulous? He even didn't hesitate to let his own grandson bear the infamy? This was obviously unreasonable. There must be other conspiracies in this. There's one more thing. Yi Tian put down the teacup and looked at Qin Feiyang. What's the matter? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. This time, it's actually my grandfather's idea. He asked me to talk to you from the side to see if you are an ambitious person. Yi Tian said. Ambitious? Qin Feiyang was taken aback and asked suspiciously. What do you mean? I don't like to beat around the bush, and I don't like to deliberately trick my friends, so I'll tell you the truth. In fact, my grandfather has always wanted me to work hard to become the next leader. But I'm not interested in this at all. I just want to cultivate quietly and live a worry-free life. But I can't go against my grandfather's wishes, so I can only do as he wants. And now, my grandfather saw your extraordinary talent, so he can't help but worry that in the future, will you become my opponent? Yi Tian shook his head. Ugh. Qin Feiyang looked at Yi Tian in astonishment. Yi Tian forced a smile and said, Am I stupid to actually tell you the truth? No, no, no. You treat me as a true friend. That's why you tell me everything you know. To be honest, I'm really surprised. Compared to your younger brother, it's as if you don't have the same parents. You have completely different personalities. Qin Feiyang shook his head. You know my little brother too? Yi Tian was stunned. Of course. Who in the entire eastern continent doesn't know what he did in the Wuxia City? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. My little brother was spoiled by my grandfather since he was young. And to be honest, compared to my younger brother, my grandfather likes my younger brother more. Yi Tian shook his head. Why? Is it because of his arrogant and domineering personality? Qin Feiyang frowned. My brother is such a person. He will do anything to achieve his goals. Let's not talk about him. Let's talk about the previous problem. You have to give me a statement. And I need you to be sincere. Yi Tian looked at Qin Feiyang and observed every change in Qin Feiyang's expression. However, Qin Feiyang's face did not show much emotion. He smiled faintly and said, As I said before, whether it's the title of the #1 monster or anything else, I'm not interested. I believe you. I envy you too. Yi Tian smiled. What do you envy me for? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. I envy you for not having any restrictions and being able to do whatever you want. But I can't. Don't be fooled by my appearance. I'm actually very depressed. Sometimes I even have an impulse to leave the itinerant cultivator alliance and wander outside alone to be a wild crane. But I can't let go of my grandfather. It's said that it's hard to be human. This sentence is really reasonable. Yi Tian sighed deeply, revealing endless bitterness. Then you didn't try to fight for it? Qin Feiyang asked. Yes. But every time I speak, I can't bear to look at my grandfather's old face. To be honest, my parents died early. My brother and I were raised by my grandfather painstakingly. How do you expect me to go against his wishes? After all, there's an old saying that filial piety is the most important virtue. If you can't even fulfill the most basic filial piety, what right do you have to talk about other virtues? Yi Tian shook his head. That makes sense. Qin Feiyang nodded. After this conversation, his favorable impression of Yi Tian had once again risen to another level. That's right. Filial piety is the lowest standard of being a human. If you can't even fulfill filial piety, you don't deserve to be a human at all. Of course, there were many types of filial piety. If the elders were right, one must obey them unconditionally. However, if the elders were wrong, one must stand up bravely to correct them. One could not blindly be filial. All right, we've talked enough. I should go and send a message to my grandfather to give him an answer, so that he can rest assured. Yi Tian smiled faintly. Then I won't see you off. Qin Feiyang smiled. Yi Tian smiled, got up, and left quickly. It's best that the deputy leader didn't collude with the Blood Hall. Qin Feiyang sighed. If the deputy leader colluded with the Blood Hall, the good image of the deputy leader would be destroyed in Yi Tian's heart. In Yi Tian's eyes, this grandfather of his was not only a good grandfather, he was also a good leader. In addition, with Yi Tian's character, if he were to find out that the Vice Alliance Master had colluded with the Blood Hall, it would definitely be a huge blow to him. About a moment later. What a strong tea fragrance. This old man can already smell it outside. Accompanied by a hoarse laughter, the white-robed old man walked into the cave. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. He was indeed waiting for someone, but he didn't expect that the first one would be this old man. Look at your expression. You don't welcome me, do you? The white-robed old man asked with a smile. No. Qin Feiyang hurriedly waved his hand and said, It's because the hall master came in person. This disciple is a little flattered and couldn't react for a moment. As a Hall of Famers, it's my duty to visit a new disciple. There's nothing to be surprised about. The white-robed old man shook his head and smiled, then asked, Can I sit? Of course, please sit. Qin Feiyang nodded repeatedly and hurriedly greeted him. Someone came? The white-robed old man sat opposite, looking at the teacup that Yi Tian had drunk from. He was slightly stunned. Brother Yi drank tea with this disciple before. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. He put away the teacup, took out a clean teacup, poured a cup, and handed it to the white-robed old man. The white-robed old man took the teacup and sniffed it. His eyes suddenly lit up. He tasted it carefully and nodded. This tea is good. This old man has tasted countless teas, but this is the first time I've tasted this tea. It's good that the hall master likes it. Qin Feiyang smiled. He twisted the teapot and filled the white-robed old man's teacup to 80%. Not bad. This old man finally understands why you and Yi Tian get along so well. It turns out that both of you love tea. The white-robed old man smiled. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, It's my honor that Brother Yi treats me as a friend. You can't say that. This old man has watched Yi Tian grow up. He's indeed a good person. But his grandfather is a different story. The white-robed old man smiled meaningfully. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang asked calmly. His grandfather? He's a cunning and black-bellied old fox. You have to be careful when interacting with him. Don't be fooled by him and have to help him count the money. The white-robed old man said. Qin Feiyang looked at the white-robed old man in shock. What's going on? This old man doesn't look like someone who likes to sow discord between others. Is he hinting at something? Old man Qi, don't go too far. All of a sudden, an angry roar was heard. Immediately after, a green-robed old man entered the cave and stared at the white-robed old man angrily. Greetings, Deputy Alliance Leader. Qin Feiyang quickly got up and bowed. No need to be so polite. The Deputy Alliance Leader smiled and looked at the white-robed old man. He said angrily, What do you mean? We agreed on a fair competition. But you're ruining my reputation behind my back? I've never seen such a wicked old bastard like you. The point is, what I said is the truth. Go and ask the elders. Who doesn't know that you're a cunning old fox? The white-robed old man drank his tea and said indifferently, Fair competition? What's going on? Qin Feiyang looked at the two of them suspiciously. Fine, I'm cunning, but at least I didn't say anything bad about you behind your back. Anyway, it's better to be shameless. The deputy alliance leader smiled coldly and sat on the chair on the left side of the tea table. Qin Feiyang quickly took out a clean teacup and poured tea. The vice leader took a sip of the tea, and a trace of surprise appeared on his face. Brother Yi likes this tea. I wonder if you'll like it, Deputy Alliance Leader? Qin Feiyang asked cautiously. He's too arrogant. How can he like it? The white-robed old man said suddenly. The Deputy Alliance Leader immediately glared and said angrily, Do you have to ruin my image? Do you still have an image? The white-robed old man was curious. The Deputy Alliance Leader was so angry that his face turned pale. He took a deep breath and looked at Qin Feiyang with a smile. Don't listen to his nonsense. To be honest, this tea is the best tea I've ever drunk in my life. As long as you like it. Qin Feiyang pretended to be relieved. Looking at the Deputy Alliance Leader's attitude, Qin Feiyang knew that Yi Tian must have answered him. So now the Deputy Alliance Leader was not wary of him at all. Back to the topic. The Deputy Alliance Leader put down the teacup and looked at Qin Feiyang. I won't be as wicked as some people. I'll be frank. In fact, both of us want to accept you as a disciple. Accept me as a disciple? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. This was a bit beyond his expectations. It was inevitable that he would be valued by the Deputy Alliance Leader and the others when he showed the power of laws. But he never expected that they would rush to accept him as a disciple now. Chapter 3172. Accepting a disciple. Qin Feiyang began to ponder. If he became the Deputy Alliance Leader's disciple, wouldn't it be easier for him to gain his trust? This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him. The Hall of Famers added, We won't force you and respect your choice. Of course, before you make a decision, you must see the other party's character clearly. Old man Qi, are you done yet? Are you trying to ruin my reputation? The Deputy Alliance Leader immediately glared at him. I didn't mention any names. You're the one who bumped into me. The Hall of Famers said calmly. Is there anyone else here other than me? Are you talking to a ghost? The Deputy Alliance Leader said angrily. The Hall of Famers just chuckled and looked at Qin Feiyang. Mo Yuan, you have to see clearly. Some people appear to be vile, but they might not be vile. Some people appear to be gentlemen, but they might not be gentlemen. The Deputy Alliance Leader also looked at Qin Feiyang and said, he had to win this kid over and help Yi Tian in the future. He would definitely achieve great things. If he fell into the hands of the Hall of Famers, even if he had no ambition, he might become ambitious in the future. He had comprehended 6 types of laws, and had even comprehended the 4th profundity of the Law of Thunder. It would be a pity if such a talent was killed, so he had to be used by him. This, Qin Feiyang hesitated for a while, and said with an embarrassed smile, Can I choose both? Both of them? The Deputy Alliance Leader and the Hall of Famers were stunned. This kid is really greedy. After all, given their identities and statuses, which one of them wasn't a powerful master? It was already a great fortune to be able to become the disciple of one of them. However, this kid actually wanted to become their disciple at the same time? If he agreed, it would be more than a meteoric rise. In the future, in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. No, in the entire Eastern continent, as long as he didn't encounter the big shots of the Demon Hall, he would be able to do whatever he wanted. To be honest, I wouldn't dare to offend the two of you. Therefore, I can only choose a compromise. I can either acknowledge all of you as my masters at the same time or reject all of you. Qin Feiyang said helplessly. The Hall of Famers was stunned for a moment before he laughed hoarsely. I didn't expect you to be so smooth. After all, the two of you are big shots in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. You have the power to decide my life and death. Of course, I have to treat you seriously. Qin Feiyang smiled awkwardly. Don't say such useless things. How about this? If you acknowledge me as your master, Not only will I give you a legendary grade heaven-defying divine artifact, I will also give you a legendary grade heaven-defying divine art. The Vice Alliance Master directly offered the tempting conditions. What? Legendary grade heaven-defying divine artifact, heaven-defying divine art. Qin Feiyang suddenly felt a rush of excitement. The Hall of Famers glanced at the Vice Alliance Master, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said calmly, I'll make the same offer. Ugh. Qin Feiyang was stunned. You old thing, do you really want to go against me? The Vice Alliance Master said angrily. Fair competition. The Hall of Famers smiled faintly. The Vice Alliance Master's face darkened. I say, the two of you, aren't you making things difficult for me? Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. To be honest, from the bottom of his heart, he preferred the Hall of Famers. Although he didn't have much contact with this person, he could feel that this person was reasonable and didn't have a bad heart. However, his goal in entering the Alliance capital this time was to become the Vice Alliance Master. The Hall of Famers smiled faintly and said, Don't worry, we won't make things difficult for you. No matter what you choose, we won't hold a grudge. Old Man Yi, am I right? Of course. The Vice Alliance Master nodded. However, Qin Feiyang could tell that the Vice Alliance Master didn't mean what he said. With such a comparison, it was clear who was better between the two. Qin Feiyang was hesitant. The Vice Alliance Master said, I'll add to the bargaining chip and give you a legendary level support technique. You have to know that even my grandson Yi Tian doesn't have a legendary level support technique and a legendary level support technique. Qin Feiyang's gaze trembled. He knew this because he had fought with Yi Tian before. Whether it was a legendary level support technique or a legendary level support technique, they were both at the pinnacle level. Old thing, you really know how to put in a lot of effort. A trace of anger appeared in the Hall of Famers' eyes. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, I'll also give you a legendary level support technique. You. The Vice Alliance Master immediately gnashed his teeth. I say, the two elders, I don't want both the legendary level support technique and the legendary level support technique. Can I not be your disciple? Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. No, the two spoke at the same time. Then I'll be your disciple. I still don't want the legendary level support technique and the legendary level support technique. Qin Feiyang said. That won't do either. The two shook their heads at the same time. Both had a non-negotiable attitude. Then what should I do? Qin Feiyang was in a dilemma. Make your choice boldly. The two said. Qin Feiyang frowned and asked cautiously, Are you sure that no matter what I choose, you won't hold a grudge against me? Yes. The two nodded. All right. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and looked at the Hall of Famers. When he saw this scene, the Vice Alliance Master frowned without leaving a trace. Hall Master, thank you for your appreciation. I believe you also know the relationship between me and Brother Yi. Brother Yi has taken care of me a lot, so I'm very sorry. Qin Feiyang said with an apologetic face. When the Hall of Famers heard this, he immediately got up with a look of disappointment. He did not expect to lose to Yi Tian in the end. In his opinion, if there was no Yi Tian, Qin Feiyang would definitely choose him. At the same time, the Vice Alliance Master was also beaming with joy. He thought that Qin Feiyang looked at the Hall of Famers to choose him, but he did not expect it to be an apology. Not bad. He had a good eye. He knew who the real number 2 person in the Itinerant Cultivator Alliance was. The Vice Alliance Master looked at the Hall of Famers and said with a smile, Old Man Qi, we agreed not to hold a grudge against him. Do you think I'm you? The Hall of Famers snorted coldly. That's for the best. The Vice Alliance Master laughed and looked at Qin Feiyang saying, Then acknowledge me as your master. I'm willing to pay my respects to Master. Qin Feiyang bowed and said, That's it. The Vice Alliance Master was stunned. Shouldn't one kneel and kowtow when acknowledging a master? You should be satisfied with such a good disciple. What else do you want? The Hall of Famers snorted coldly. That's true. The Vice Alliance Master chuckled and looked at Qin Feiyang, saying with a smile, I mean what I say. After saying that, he waved his hand, and a rectangular iron box and 2 rectangular jade boxes immediately appeared. Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up. These must be the legendary heaven-defying divine artifact and the two divine arts. The Hall of Famers said disdainfully. Old man Yi, you're the Vice Alliance Master after all. Shouldn't the ceremony be more grand? Even if the whole world doesn't know about it, at least let the people of the Itinerant Cultivator Alliance know about it. The Vice Alliance Master did not answer. He looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, do you think it's necessary? I don't think it's necessary. It's too much of a waste of time. Qin Feiyang shook his head. See, this is my disciple. He's naturally low-key. The Vice Alliance Master laughed. The Hall of Famers could not help but pout. All right, cultivate well. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. Also, take out your divine voice stone. The Vice Alliance Master said. Qin Feiyang took out the divine voice stone. After the two established the contract bridge, the Vice Alliance Master looked at the Hall of Famers and said, Old man, let's go. Did I stop you? How shameless. The Hall of Famers said angrily. Haha. What's done is done. Don't think about poaching my disciple. The Vice Alliance Master smiled proudly, then turned and strode away. Mo Yuancheng, I really don't know what you're thinking. The Hall of Famers looked at Qin Feiyang, shook his head and sighed, then turned and strode away. You'll know what I'm thinking in the future. Qin Feiyang muttered secretly. Then he sealed the door of the cave and looked at the three boxes floating in the void. His eyes were full of surprise. He never expected that not only did he gain the trust of the Vice Alliance Master, but he also obtained so many treasures. This was all thanks to the Hall of Famers. If it weren't for this person, would the Vice Alliance Master have given him these treasures? Don't even think about it. Qin Feiyang couldn't wait to open the rectangular iron box. There was a black battle suit lying inside. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He thought it was a weapon, but he didn't expect it to be a battle armor. However, this battle armor was not bad, because now he didn't lack weapons, but he didn't have a single battle armor. It just made up for his shortcomings. When he came back to his senses, he cut his finger and dripped blood to bind it. A message suddenly poured into his mind. The Spectre armor was a legendary level heaven-defying artifact. Wearing this armor, one would be like a ghost and no one would be able to detect one's aura. There's such an ability? Qin Feiyang was stunned. This meant that as long as he wore the Spectre armor, he could turn into a ghost and no one would be able to sense his aura. In other words, this Spectre armor could completely hide one's aura. Amazing! But the only pity was that this Spectre armor couldn't block the prying of divine thoughts. But it was pretty good to be able to hide one's aura. After all, the main function of the battle armor was defense. At that moment, with a thought, the Spectre armor appeared on his body and his aura disappeared. If there was a person standing in front of him at this moment, if this person didn't release his divine thoughts or turned his head, he would definitely not find someone standing behind him. With this battle armor, it was like adding wings to a tiger. Immediately, with another thought, the Spectre armor disappeared from his body. Immediately after, then he opened the two square jade boxes. Two jade slips lay quietly inside. Qin Feiyang took out the two jade slips and integrated his divine thoughts into them. Two pieces of information immediately poured into his mind at the same time. Space-time step, a legendary level auxiliary heaven-defying technique. Activating space-time step. It was like traversing through time and space, coming and going without a trace. 7 killing sword art, a legendary level heaven-defying technique. 1 sword, 1 kill, invincible. 7 swords, can destroy heaven and earth. Space-time step, 7 killing sword art. Qin Feiyang's face was full of excitement. Although he had mastered many divine arts such as the Guyuan sword art, the Ruins of End art, and the Dragon God art, these divine arts had not evolved into heaven-defying divine arts, so they were basically useless now. And the 6-word divine arts were only low-level heaven-defying divine arts. Except for the killing domain, they didn't have much significance. So now, the divine arts were his most fatal shortcoming. And the appearance of this space-time step and 7 killing sword art undoubtedly helped him make up for this shortcoming. Chapter 3173. Swish. Qin Feiyang entered the castle and meditated to comprehend the space-time step and 7 killing sword art. Outside, Time passed day by day. On the 5th day, a black-clothed youth came to Sky Peak and stood in front of cave abode number 3, saying, "Brother Emo, are you there? I'm Li Yuandao. I have something to see you about." However, after waiting for a while, he did not receive a response. Looking suspiciously at the entrance of the cave abode, Li Yuandao turned around and left in disappointment. At the same time, inside the castle, 5 days outside, 5,000 years had passed here. Qin Feiyang finally comprehended the space-time step and 7 killing sword art. As for Li Yuandao's voice, he also heard it, but ignored it and continued to comprehend the law of force and the law of wind. Now he had already comprehended the 3rd profound of the other laws, but he had not even comprehended the 1st profound of these 2 laws. So he had to work hard. Once he comprehended the 3rd profound of these 2 laws, he would be able to comprehend the 5th profound of the law of thunder. Once he succeeded in comprehending the 5th profound, he would be able to step into the half-step sovereign realm when he reached the great perfection imperishable realm. To him, the sovereign realm was something he had been yearning for a long time. Outside, half a month later, Li Yuandao appeared on Sky Peak again. Looking at Qin Feiyang's cave abode door, which was still sealed by the law of thunder, his eyes were filled with helplessness. Were these people all cultivation maniacs? Next, every half a month Li Yuandao would come. But every time, he would return empty-handed. Not only Qin Feiyang, even Zhao Xiaojin and Yi Tian's cave abodes were sealed by the law of thunder. In the blink of an eye, 10 years passed. In the castle, more than 36 million years had passed. Qin Feiyang finally comprehended the 3rd profound of the law of force and the law of wind. He also finally came out of seclusion. Walking out of the castle, he looked at the herb field outside. Over the years, Big Black Wolf, the 3 Black Panther brothers, Pai Lupi, and Theta Wong not only managed the Black Tortoise world well, but even the Devil's Land had improved. Qin Feiyang released his divine sense and quickly found Pai Lupi and Theta Wong. The 2 of them sat cross-legged somewhere in the medicinal field to meditate. Whoosh! Qin Feiyang took a step forward and landed in front of the 2. He discovered that the 2 of them had actually already stepped into the initial stage of the imperishable realm. "Greetings, Lord Ruler." The 2 of them also sensed Qin Feiyang's aura. They quickly opened their eyes, got up, and saluted respectfully. "You guys are cultivating pretty fast." Qin Feiyang smiled. "This is all thanks to Miss Fire Lotus. When we were in the great circle of the 9 heavens realm, she helped us open the door of potential." The 2 said. "I see." Qin Feiyang nodded. "What? Unlocked all the doors of potential?" A cry of surprise suddenly sounded from Qin Feiyang's body. "Who's talking?" Pai Lupi and Theta Wong froze. Qin Feiyang was also a bit surprised. He's never heard this voice before. Is someone hiding in his body? That can't be right. If there really was someone hiding in his body, how could he not know? Wait a minute. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang thought of the specter armor. With a thought, the specter armor appeared in front of Qin Feiyang. "This is?" Pai Lupi and Theta Wong were suspicious. "This is the legendary divine artifact that the vice leader gave me," Qin Feiyang said. "Legendary divine artifact?" The 2 of them looked at the specter armor in shock. "Were you the one talking just now?" Qin Feiyang looked at the specter armor and frowned. The specter armor was silent. Qin Feiyang said, "I forgot that a divine artifact like you has its own consciousness. Who exactly are you? Where is this place? You can actually help them open all the doors of potential. How did you do it?" The specter armor finally spoke. Its voice was a bit hoarse. "Since it's like this, then I'll hide it. I'm Qin Feiyang." Qin Feiyang said. "What? You're Qin Feiyang?" The specter armor was shocked. "That's right." Qin Feiyang took a facial restoration pill and quickly recovered his true appearance. "It's really you." The specter armor was extremely shocked. Who in the Eastern continent didn't know about Qin Feiyang's deeds? He was a young man with a sovereign divine weapon. But what shocked it the most was that Qin Feiyang's talent was also so amazing. Over the years, it had been in Qin Feiyang's body and witnessed Qin Feiyang comprehending the 3rd profound meaning of the law of force and the law of wind. In just over 300,000 years, he comprehended the 3rd profound meaning of the 2 laws. It had never seen such a terrifying comprehension ability, because if it was someone else, they would at most comprehend the first profound meaning in 300,000 years. They might not even be able to comprehend the first profound meaning. Do you really want to inform the vice leader now? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. The specter armor was silent. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, I can fulfill your wish, but in this way, you will lose the opportunity to evolve into a sovereign divine weapon. Ha! The specter armor was surprised. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. This is not a space divine item, but an independent world. Qin Feiyang said. An independent world. The specter armor immediately trembled in the void, revealing a wave of disbelief. Yes. You have two choices. One is to inform the vice leader, and the other is to stay by my side obediently. If your performance is good, I will consider letting you enter the land of source. Qin Feiyang said. The land of source. The specter armor murmured. He even knew about the land of source. Could it be that this was really an independent world? Brat, bring it to the land of source. Qin Feiyang looked at the sky and shouted. Swish. Brat immediately appeared and complained. It's so troublesome. After saying that, he waved his small hand and sent the specter armor to the land of source. Why are you more afraid of trouble than me? Qin Feiyang was speechless. You have an opinion? Brat stared at him. How would I dare? Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. Then shut up. Also, bring in more spirit vein and crystal vein. After saying that, Brat disappeared without a trace. And at the next moment, the specter armor also appeared in front of Qin Feiyang out of thin air. How is it? Qin Feiyang looked at it playfully. Awesome, I will listen to you from now on, as long as I can enter the land of source. The specter armor was extremely excited. Qin Feiyang smiled. Pai Lupi and Brat also smiled. No matter how powerful a divine artifact was, it had to be obedient in front of the Lord Ruler. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and the specter armor entered his body. Then he looked at Pai Lupi and Brat and asked, Are there any other undead stage powerhouses in the Black Tortoise realm now? There have been some for a long time. According to my statistics, there are already hundreds of people and beasts who have stepped into the half-step undead stage. The two nodded. Good. Qin Feiyang was overjoyed. Once the Black Tortoise realm gave birth to undead stage beings, it was equivalent to a qualitative transformation. Theta Wang said again. But Lord Ruler, the growth of the Black Tortoise realm is getting faster and faster day by day. We still need more spirit vein and crystal vein. You don't have to worry about this. Just help me take care of the Black Tortoise realm. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Okay. The two nodded. Boom. Suddenly, above the ancient castle, a terrifying murderous aura emerged. Qin Feiyang was startled and turned his head to look, only to see blood dragons roaring above the ancient castle. Each of them was more than 10,000 feet long, covering the sky and covering the earth with a monstrous murderous aura. This is? Qin Feiyang was surprised. There should be at least 10,000 blood dragons. Haha! Madman's loud laughter rang out. Whoosh! The next moment, Madman flew out of the ancient castle and stood in the sky, his face full of pride. The two of you continue to cultivate. Qin Feiyang looked at Pai Lupi and Theta Wang and said with a smile, then took a step forward and landed in front of Madman. He asked suspiciously, What are you doing? Why are you so proud? The fourth profound, 1,000 dragon god slaying. Madman laughed, and the blood dragons roaring in the sky immediately pounced towards Qin Feiyang with bared fangs and brandished claws. The fourth profound? Qin Feiyang was shocked. This guy had actually comprehended the fourth profound of the law of slaughter. Kid, prepare to die. Madman laughed loudly. Prepare to die? The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth lifted, and a murderous aura burst out, and a 3-feet-long bloodsword appeared in his hand. Kill formula? Are you joking with me? A mere low-level heaven-defying formula. Is it useful? Madman's face was full of disdain. Do you think this is the kill formula? Qin Feiyang laughed mockingly, and with a slash of his sword, a blood dragon was shattered. Immediately after, the second crimson longsword appeared, and it crushed another crimson dragon as easily as crushing dry weeds. Next, The third, the fourth, the fifth. When the seventh bloodsword appeared, an earth-shattering aura erupted like a volcano and all the blood dragons were destroyed. What is this? Madman was stunned. What are you doing? In the sky. Little Wimp's roar suddenly sounded, and then a surge of origin energy descended, shattering the blood sword. If you fight in the Black Tortoise world again, I will throw all of you out. Little Wimp coldly snorted, and after the origin energy erased the fluctuations of the battle and repaired the void, it quickly rushed into the sky and disappeared without a trace. Damn. Qin Feiyang and Madman both looked at the sky in shock. Origin energy was actually this strong? But after thinking about it carefully, it made sense. Back in the heavenly cloud ocean, when he fought against Old Hai, the Grand Deacon, and the 3 sovereign divine weapons of the Blood Hall, Little Wimp had used his origin energy. At that time, the 3 divine weapons of the sovereigns were extremely wary of the origin energy. So now, it was natural for him to crush the blood sword. I can't afford to offend him, Madman muttered, and ran in front of Qin Feiyang, and whispered, when did your kill formula become so strong? This isn't the kill formula. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Not the kill formula? Madman was stunned. Qin Feiyang nodded, and with a wave of his hand, 2 blood swords appeared. On the left was the blood sword formed by the kill formula, and on the left was the blood sword formed by the 7 deadly sword art. The blood sword formed by the kill formula was shorter and thinner. On the other hand, the blood sword formed by the 7 deadly swords technique was much longer and wider. Instead of saying it was a 3 feet long sword, it was better to say it was a 3 feet wide sword. It is indeed different. Madman nodded. He was naturally very familiar with the kill formula, so he recognized it after a comparison. This is the 7 deadly sword art, a legendary heaven-defying killing technique that the vice leader gave me. Qin Feiyang smiled, and with a wave of his hand, the 2 blood swords dissipated in the void. What? He gave you a teleportation technique. Is there something wrong with his head? Madman was stunned. Chapter 3174. Of course there's nothing wrong with his brain. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Then why did he give you a heaven-defying technique? Madman was suspicious. It's not just this 7 killing sword technique. There's also a legendary divine artifact and a legendary support divine technique. Qin Feiyang smiled. Madman looked at Qin Feiyang in shock and shouted, this old thing must be crazy. Qin Feiyang shook his head and explained the situation to Madman. So that's the case. Madman suddenly understood. Revealing 6 types of law forces, no wonder the deputy leader was so generous. He then said, tell me, if I don't go to the Hall of the Exalted, isn't it a bit of a loss? What do you mean? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Think about it. I have mastered 4 types of law forces. No, it's 5 now, and I have comprehended the 4th profound of the slaughter law. With my talent, if I enter the Hall of the Exalted, won't I be able to get a lot of divine items? Madman said. Qin Feiyang was startled and nodded. If that's the case, it's indeed a bit of a loss. Bastard, this won't do. I have to find a chance to enter the Hall of the Exalted again. Madman pondered. Qin Feiyang was about to speak, but he suddenly frowned and looked at Madman in surprise. Wait a minute, what did you just say? 5 types of law forces? Yes. Madman nodded and waved his hand. A wisp of black flame rose. This, Qin Feiyang was stunned. That's right. This is law force. And it's the law of darkness. When did you comprehend it? Qin Feiyang was surprised. A few years ago. Don't be so surprised. With my talent, is it difficult to comprehend 1 or 2 types of law forces? Madman curled his lips and waved his hand again, causing the law of darkness to dissipate. The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. Listen, is this still something a human would say? In this guy's eyes, comprehending the law force is as simple as eating and drinking. How can those self-proclaimed geniuses live? Got it. The madman's eyes lit up. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, I have an idea. What is it? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. I'll find a chance to have a big fight with someone, and show them the power of these 5 laws. When the time comes, they'll naturally make an exception and come find me. They might even be like you, fighting to take me in as a disciple. Madman chuckled. Now that you mention it, we can really do that. Qin Feiyang nodded. If madmen also obtained a legendary divine artifact and divine art, then their overall strength would undoubtedly increase by another level. Furthermore, in any case, they didn't have a good impression of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Since there was a chance now, they might as well get some more divine items. Alright then, you go out and make plans. I'll continue my closed-door cultivation. With that, Madman turned around and slipped into the castle. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment, then left the Black Tortoise world, and appeared in the cave dwelling. The shock in the Spectre battle armor's heart was simply indescribable. Qin Feiyang grasped 6 laws, and this madman Emo also grasped 5 laws. What kind of monsters were they? Too abnormal. Of course, at this moment, it had completely dispelled the idea of reporting. What a joke! Which heaven-defying divine artifact didn't desire to enter the land of origin to cultivate? Right now it was only thinking about how to perform to satisfy Qin Feiyang. Brother Emo, are you there? Suddenly, Li Yuandao's voice sounded from outside. This person again? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He turned around and waved his hand, causing the law of lightning on the cave dwelling's door to dissipate. Li Yuandao, who was standing outside, saw this and a trace of joy appeared on his face. He hurriedly walked into the cave dwelling and looked at Qin Feiyang standing inside. He smiled bitterly and said, Brother Emo, it's really difficult to see you. Sorry, I was in closed-door cultivation and didn't hear it. Why are you looking for me? Qin Feiyang smiled apologetically and asked doubtfully. I'm not looking for you. My father is looking for you. Li Yuandao smiled. Your father? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He didn't seem to have any interaction with Li Yuandao's father. And even this was only the second time he had met Li Yuandao. My father wants to invite you to his house as a guest. I hope that Brother Emo, no matter what, will give me this face. Li Yuandao nodded and smiled. Guest? Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. It shouldn't be that simple. However, Li Yuandao's previous reporting was also a favor. He had to give him face. Alright then, I'll go. Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. Thank you, Brother Emo. When do you plan to go? I'll let my family prepare. Li Yuandao was overjoyed. Let's do it now. As for the banquet, there's really no need for that. Everyone can just sit together and drink tea and chat. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Is this appropriate? Li Yuandao was stunned. Do you know why Brother Yi and I get along? Qin Feiyang didn't answer and asked instead. I don't know. Li Yuandao shook his head. Tea. Qin Feiyang smiled. Tea. Li Yuandao was stunned, then thought carefully and smiled. I understand. Brother Emo, please. Please. Qin Feiyang smiled. Immediately, the two left the cave, rose into the air, and flew towards the alliance. If it was someone with the cultivation of second Xing, it would be very fast to fly to the alliance. But Qin Feiyang and Li Yuandao couldn't. Qin Feiyang was only at the great accomplishment Immortal Realm, and Li Yuandao was only at the great perfection Immortal Realm. It would take them at least an hour to fly to the alliance. Without stopping, the two of them finally entered the alliance capital. Look, isn't that Emo Fengyuan? This guy actually dares to come to the alliance. Isn't he afraid of Zhang Diyuan taking revenge on him? You know, Zhang Sanbao and Zhang Santian's deaths are related to him. So what if it's related to him? He's now a disciple of the Hall of the Exalted, and he calls young Master Yi Tian brother. Even if Zhang Diyuan hates him to the bone, he wouldn't dare to do anything to him. As soon as Qin Feiyang entered the alliance, he caused a commotion. And listening to these discussions, Li Yuandao snorted in his heart. What do you know? Now this Mo Fengyuan was already a popular person in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Not to mention Zhang Diyuan. Even the elders had to be polite to him. But there were some things that he didn't dare to say. East City. In the southern suburbs. There was a huge mansion. Whoosh. Li Yuandao brought Qin Feiyang and landed in front of the mansion's gate. Young master. There were 2 guards at the door. When they saw Li Yuandao, they quickly bowed. Yes. Li Yuandao nodded and turned to Qin Feiyang with a smile. Brother Mo, please. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and stepped through the door. Li Yuandao hurriedly followed and led the way. Young master, why did you invite Mo Fengyuan to our Zhang family? One of the guards was suspicious. You don't know. I heard that the higher-ups intend to let our master succeed the position of East City Lord, but they haven't made a decision yet. That's why I'm guessing that the patriarch can't sit still any longer and wants to get closer to Mo Yuan. After all, he and young master Yi Tian call each other brothers. As long as he's willing to help, it'll be a sure thing. Another guard said in a low voice. I see. The guard nodded in realization and said with a smile, if the patriarch really becomes the city lord of the eastern city, then we can be considered to have a meteoric rise. Yes, I hope this can be done. Another guard nodded. In the mansion, there were many buildings and groups of rockery. The garden was filled with fragrance. Brother Mo, what do you think of our Zhang family? Li Yuandao asked with a smile. I don't have any requirements for the living environment, so I can't comment. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. Li Yuandao smiled bitterly and said with admiration, Brother Mo's attitude really makes me admire. In the past, he called Qin Feiyang by his name, but now he called him Brother Mo. This was obviously lowering his attitude and flattering. After a while, the two came to an elegant and quiet courtyard. In the courtyard, small trees were verdant and hundreds of flowers were in full bloom. Inside, there was a 3-story attic with carved beams and painted rafters. It was antique. On the other side, there was a stream, winding through a pavilion. The stream was clear, and there were small fish swimming in it. Father, I've invited Brother Mo, Li Yuandao shouted. Opened the gate of the courtyard, and let Qin Feiyang in. Da-da. Soon. Accompanied by a burst of hurried footsteps, a middle-aged man walked out of the attic. He looked to be in his 40s, and was about 1.8 meters tall. His eyes were bright, and he walked with a majestic gait. It's really nephew Mo. The middle-aged man smiled and came forward. Looking at Li Yuandao, he said with dissatisfaction, Why didn't you inform me in advance? I could have prepared to welcome you at the door. Brother Mo doesn't like this kind of extravagance, so I didn't inform you in advance. Brother Mo, let me introduce you. This is my father Li Fuyuan. Li Yuandao looked at Qin Feiyang and smiled. Greetings, Lord Li. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and smiled. Li Fuyuan quickly waved his hand and said, No. If you don't mind, you can call me uncle. Qin Feiyang was stunned for a moment. Wasn't this too cordial? Also, what virtuous nephew? Only those who had a very good relationship with their parents would have such a title. However, the other party treated him so warmly, he naturally couldn't let the other party lose face. He cupped his hands and smiled. Hello, Uncle Li. Good. Please come in. Li Fuyuan smiled and looked at Li Yuandao. Go to the kitchen and quickly prepare the wine and dishes. Send them to me. They must be the best. Father, Brother Mo doesn't like these. Li Yuandao smiled. Don't like it? Li Fuyuan was stunned. Yes. Li Yuandao nodded and smiled. Brother Mo is the same as young master Yi Tian. He likes tea. So that's how it is. Li Fuyuan nodded and said, Just in time, I have a lot of good tea here. Nephew must taste it. Then I won't be polite. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Don't be polite. Just treat this place as your own home. After Li Fuyuan said that, he retreated to the side and made a gesture of invitation to Qin Feiyang. The three of them immediately walked towards the attic. Chapter 3175. Entering the hall of the attic, Qin Feiyang finally saw what luxury was. The expensive mahogany furniture was all made of Phoebe Jinan wood that was more than 10,000 years old. There were all kinds of jade and gems. There was also sandalwood burning on the side, giving off wisps of smoke. Nephew, please sit down. Li Fuyuan sat on the main seat and greeted him with a smile. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded and sat opposite Li Fuyuan. Li Fuyuan looked at Li Yuandao again and said with a smile, There is a small golden jar on my desk. Go and get it. Okay. Li Yuandao responded and hurriedly ran to the second floor. Li Fuyuan began to prepare the tools for making tea. Whether it was the teapot or the teacups, they were all made of peerless precious jade, full of brilliance and spirituality. After a while, Li Yuandao ran down with a small golden jar in his arms. Qin Feiyang looked at it suspiciously. The small jar was about the size of a baby's palm. It was quite delicate and seemed to be made of gold. Li Fuyuan took the jar and opened the lid. Qin Feiyang's expression froze. What was inside was actually a type of golden tea leaves. Each tea leaf seemed to be cast with gold foil. It looked more like a small golden leaf. It was the first time Qin Feiyang had seen this kind of tea. To tell you the truth, nephew, I also like to drink tea and chat when I have nothing to do. Li Fuyuan began to make tea and said with a smile. As for Li Yuandao, he sat aside and smiled without saying anything. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang didn't answer. He merely smiled. If he didn't see Li Fuyuan making tea with his own eyes, he might believe it. But now, as an experienced tea drinker, he could see at a glance that Li Fuyuan's tea-making technique was not skillful. He didn't look like a person who often drank tea. Therefore, it was more obvious that he was trying to get close to him. After a while, the tea was made. Li Fuyuan poured a small cup and motioned Li Yuandao to hand it to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang took the teacup and looked at the color of the tea. It actually had a faint golden color. He placed it on the tip of his nose and sniffed. The tea fragrance was rich, but it was not pungent. Instead, it carried a faint floral fragrance. Try it. Li Fuyuan looked at Qin Feiyang expectantly. Qin Feiyang placed it near his mouth and tasted it. Immediately, a fragrant aroma filled his mouth, causing his spirit to flourish. Without a doubt, this was definitely a good tea. However, it was still a bit lacking compared to the heavenly immortal dew. Not bad, not bad. Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. If you really like it, then please kindly accept this pot of tea. Li Fuyuan smiled. How would I dare to accept such an expensive gift? Qin Feiyang was stunned and quickly waved his hand. It's precisely because it's precious that it's suitable for you. Li Fuyuan smiled. In fact, in his eyes, no matter how good the tea was, it had nothing to do with the word expensive. It was not even as valuable as a pot of Tianshan Yulu. This, Qin Feiyang had the heavenly immortal dew. Why would he need this tea? However, if he directly rejected it, it would be unreasonable. After all, the other party treated him so warmly. Brother Mo, just accept it. It's just a small token of my appreciation. Li Yuandao closed the lid and forced the small golden pot to Qin Feiyang. Then I'll accept it. Qin Feiyang laughed and accepted the small pot. However, he did not put it into the universe ring. Instead, he placed it on the tea table in front of him. Then, he took another sip of tea, then looked at Li Fuyuan and said with a smile, Uncle Li, I don't like to beat around the bush. Why don't we get straight to the point? Hearing this, Li Fuyuan was slightly stunned and couldn't help but look at Li Yuandao suspiciously. I didn't say anything. Li Yuandao transmitted his voice. You didn't say anything? Li Fuyuan was secretly shocked. His son definitely wouldn't lie to him. This could only mean that the young man in front of him had already seen that he had something to ask of him. His eyesight was a little scary. Seeing this, Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, Then let me guess. Uncle Li, if I'm not mistaken, you invited me here this time for the matter of the East City Lord. Li Fuyuan's heart skipped a beat. Li Yuandao pondered for a while, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, Brother Mo, since we've already talked about it, then we won't hide it anymore. This is indeed the reason why I invited you here this time. For this matter, you should go to Brother Yi. After all, Brother Yi is the grandson of the Deputy Alliance leader. His words carry more weight than mine. Qin Feiyang was suspicious. This, Li Yuandao hesitated. He did think of looking for Yi Tian, but Yi Tian was in seclusion. Moreover, with Yi Tian's character, he didn't like others to please him. Therefore, he thought of Qin Feiyang. Firstly, Qin Feiyang and Yi Tian had a good relationship. Secondly, Qin Feiyang had shown extraordinary talent, so his words should carry no less weight than Yi Tian's. However, he didn't dare to say these things in front of his father, because the red-clothed old man had already ordered that no one was allowed to leak Qin Feiyang's matter. Otherwise, it would be a great crime for 9 generations to be exterminated. Nephew, actually, I also plan to look for young Master Yi Tian. But my son told you that it might be more useful to look for you. Although I don't know why he said that, I'm willing to believe him. Of course. After the matter is done, Uncle Li will not treat you unfairly. Li Fuyuan smiled. Qin Feiyang heard this and said with a smile, then what is Uncle Li going to give me? As long as I can take it out, I can give it to you, Li Fuyuan said. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered and suddenly said with a smile, okay, I agree to help, but the reward I want must be spirit vein and crystal vein. Spirit vein, crystal vein? Li Fuyuan suddenly frowned. Father, don't be impatient. Li Yuandao secretly comforted, looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, Brother Mo, how many do you need? If it's 100 or 200, we can give it to you now. Yuandao, what are you doing? You agreed to him so easily. Li Fuyuan secretly said angrily. It's just 100 or 200. It's not like our Li family doesn't have it. Don't worry, if he only wants 100 or 200, then we'll make a profit. Li Yuandao transmitted. At the same time, Qin Feiyang was stunned, looked at Li Yuandao strangely, and said with a smile, Brother Yuandao, are you joking with me? 100 or 200, even a small family would be embarrassed to take out 100 or 200, let alone a rich family like your Li family. Hearing this, Li Yuandao looked a little embarrassed, and said with a smile, Brother Mo said it well, I'm too stingy, then tell me how many do you want? 10,000 crystal vein, 10,000 spirit vein, Qin Feiyang said. What? Li Fuyuan suddenly stood up. 10,000 crystal vein, 10,000 spirit vein. This added up to 20,000. What an exorbitant demand. Seeing this, Li Yuandao hurriedly transmitted, Father, sit down. He was afraid that Li Fuyuan's attitude would make Qin Feiyang dissatisfied. Li Fuyuan looked at Li Yuandao, suppressed the anger in his heart, and returned to his seat. Li Yuandao looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, Brother Mo, this is too much. Is it? Compared to the position of the city lord of the East City, this should be nothing. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Then you can definitely let me sit in the position of the city lord of the East City? Li Fuyuan opened his mouth. His tone was a little cold. As long as you give me spirit vein and crystal vein, I promise to let you become the city lord of the East City. Qin Feiyang smiled confidently. Big talk, do you think you are young Master Yi Tian? For the sake of Yuandao, I can promise you, but at most 1,000 spirit vein and crystal vein. Even if you don't let me sit in the position of city lord, it can be considered a meeting gift for you. Li Fuyuan said. Meeting gift? That's really generous. However, 10,000, no bargaining. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Ridiculous. Don't think that just because you have some relationship with young Master Yi Tian, you have the right to be arrogant. At most, you are just arrogant. Li Fuyuan couldn't hold it in anymore. He didn't know that Qin Feiyang had mastered 6 kinds of laws, nor did he know that Qin Feiyang was the disciple of the Deputy Alliance leader. He only knew that Qin Feiyang had some relationship with Yi Tian. And he always thought that Qin Feiyang was relying on his relationship with Yi Tian to demand an exorbitant price in front of him. In fact, he didn't know that even without Yi Tian, the current him could make the Deputy Alliance leader nod his head. Father, don't be like this, calm down. Seeing Li Fuyuan angry, Li Yuandao's face changed, and he quickly comforted him. I can't calm down. Why does he dare to ask for so many spirit veins and crystal veins? Li Fuyuan sneered. Sigh, you don't understand. Li Yuandao sighed. Can you have some backbone? Just because he and Yi Tian call each other brothers, you are so scared? Young Master Yi Tian is also a reasonable person. Okay, no need to say any more. Li Fuyuan secretly snorted, looked at Qin Feiyang and said, My Li family's temple is small. It can't accommodate a big Buddha like you. Please leave. This is what you said. When I leave this door, even if you come to invite me in person next time, I won't come. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Don't worry, there won't be a next time. Li Fuyuan smiled coldly. Okay. As for this tea, Qin Feiyang nodded, looked at the small golden jar on the tea table in front of him, and said, You'd better keep it for yourself. With that, he got up and left. Brother Mo, wait. Li Yuandao quickly chased after him. Come back with me. Li Fuyuan shouted. Father, you're in big trouble. Li Yuandao turned to look at Li Fuyuan and said angrily, then continued to chase after Qin Feiyang. Big trouble. Li Fuyuan sneered disapprovingly. Outside. After Li Yuandao caught up with Qin Feiyang, he said apologetically, Brother Mo, I'm sorry. I sincerely apologize to you on behalf of my father. No need. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and smiled. It's all the vice leader's fault for the blockade order. Otherwise, if father knew that you have mastered 6 laws, he would definitely not have such an attitude. Li Yuandao was quite upset. Actually, I have to thank him for the blockade order. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Thank? Li Yuandao was stunned. That's right. Otherwise, how can I see your father's character clearly? This is a typical snobbish person. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Li Yuandao's expression froze. Although his father was indeed snobbish, but to say it in front of him without hesitation, he also felt a little uncomfortable. Chapter 3176. Brother Li, hold on. Qin Feiyang stopped in his tracks, turned around and smiled at Li Yuandao. He then leaped into the sky and flew toward the Hall of the Exalted. Sigh. Li Yuandao sighed, shook his head, and returned to the attic. He's gone. Li Fuyuan asked. Yes. Li Yuandao nodded. What's the matter with you? Why are you so afraid of him? Li Fuyuan frowned. You don't understand. Li Yuandao shook his head. Then tell me. Li Fuyuan said angrily. What should I say? The higher-ups have issued a lockdown order. No one in the Hall of the Exalted is allowed to leak anything about Mo Yuanchuan. Li Yuandao roared. What? 9 familial extermination. Li Fuyuan was shocked. What exactly was hidden in this? He immediately realized the seriousness of the problem and said angrily, Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Didn't I tell you earlier? We can't offend him. Li Yuandao rubbed his forehead. But you didn't say anything about the 9 familial extermination. If you had told me earlier, no matter what, I would have been polite to him. Li Fuyuan said. It's too late to say anything now. Father, let me tell you. It's very likely that you can't be the city lord anymore. Li Yuandao sighed. Can't be. Li Fuyuan was stunned. Was it that serious? No. He had to find a way to make up for it. Li Fuyuan pulled Li Yuandao and urged, Let's go. Let's catch up and apologize to him. What's the point of this? He already told me without hesitation that you're a snob. Do you know what this means? He said that you're a snob and he definitely won't like you anymore. Li Yuandao shook his head. It's better to do something than not to do it. Hurry up. Li Fuyuan urged. Li Yuandao was helpless. If he knew this would happen, he wouldn't have done it in the first place. Back to Qin Feiyang. After leaving the Alliance City, he went straight to the Hall of the Exalted. What a waste of time. If he had the time, he might as well stay in the Black Tortoise realm and cultivate. Outside the Alliance capital, there were also endless glaciers. Snow and ice covered the area, and the cold wind was bone-chilling. A short while later, Qin Feiyang arrived above a plain. Boom. Suddenly, a terrifying aura erupted from below. Qin Feiyang was startled. He looked down and saw a black figure breaking out of the ice at lightning speed and charging towards him. Qin Feiyang's expression changed. There was actually an ambush? This person's speed was very fast, so fast that even he couldn't catch him. At this critical moment, the Spectre battle armor appeared on its own and instantly recovered. That black figure punched Qin Feiyang's body. Qin Feiyang immediately let out a muffled groan and flew out like a meteor. What? Legendary grade heaven-defying armor. The black figure exclaimed. A legendary heaven-defying divine artifact was comparable to a peak dominator. Therefore, although the black figure's sneak attack was successful, Qin Feiyang wasn't in any danger with the Spectre armor protecting him. Who are you? Qin Feiyang stabilized his body and looked at the person. The person was wearing a black robe and a mask. He couldn't tell who he was. You're lucky this time, but it won't be so easy next time. The black-robed person roared angrily and turned to flee. You want to leave after sneaking an attack on me? Qin Feiyang used the space-time step and activated the 7 deadly sword art. He charged forward at lightning speed. What? This is actually a legendary heaven-defying divine art, and a heaven-defying auxiliary divine art. The black-robed person was shocked. But his speed was faster. After all, his cultivation was much higher than Qin Fei Yang's, and he had also activated an unknown heaven-defying auxiliary divine art. He didn't even look back as he fled in the direction of the alliance capital. Qin Fei Yang raised his eyebrows and was about to give up when two figures appeared in front of him. It was Li Fuyuan and his son. Looking at the black-robed person, the father and son were also shocked. Looking at the ferocious Qin Fei Yang, the two immediately understood. "Father, this is a good opportunity," Li Yuandao roared. Li Fuyuan understood and immediately unleashed a terrifying aura towards the black-robed person. Li Yuandao naturally retreated to the side. "Damn it! Why is he here?" Seeing Li Fuyuan charging towards him, the black-robed person cursed inwardly and turned to flee in the other direction. He was afraid of attracting others, so he decisively left after his attack failed. But he didn't expect to meet Li Fuyuan. Trying to escape? Li Fuyuan sneered and also activated a heaven-defying auxiliary divine art and chased after the black-robed person. The two of them disappeared from Qin Fei Yang's sight like lightning. "Brother Mo, are you alright?" Li Yuandao ran to Qin Fei Yang and asked with concern. "I'm fine." Qin Fei Yang waved his hand and asked, "Why are you here?" "I went back and told my father, so he specially came to apologize to you. But I didn't expect to encounter this. Who was the person who attacked you?" Li Yuandao was suspicious. "I don't know either." Qin Fei Yang shook his head. Swish. At this moment, four figures quickly rushed over and landed in front of Qin Fei Yang. These were four old men, all with white hair. Qin Fei Yang knew one of them. It was Eldering who guarded the East City. "Mo Yuan?" Eldering and the other three looked at Qin Fei Yang and were slightly stunned. Then, they looked at Li Yuandao and asked, "Are you fighting here?" No. Li Yuandao quickly waved his hand and explained, "Someone attacked Mo Yuan. My father and I just arrived. My father is now chasing that person." "What? You were attacked?" Eldering was stunned. "Yes." Qin Fei Yang nodded, looked at the other three old men, and asked suspiciously, "They are?" "They are the guardians of the West City, North City and South City. We heard the commotion and specially came to check it out." Eldering. "Mo Yuan, who was the person who attacked you? How dare he act rashly in the Alliance capital? We must not let him off easily." One of the old men snorted. "I'm not sure. I didn't see his face clearly." Qin Fei Yang shook his head. "Then which direction did they go?" Eldering asked. "That way." Qin Fei Yang pointed in the direction where the black-robed man and Li Fuyuan disappeared. "Let's go." Eldering waved his hand and swept up Qin Fei Yang and Li Yuandao. Then he followed the other three old men and chased after them with a heaven-defying auxiliary technique. Qin Fei Yang looked at the four of them with a trace of surprise in his eyes. The speed of these four people was actually faster than Li Fuyuan and the black-robed man. But when he thought about it, he understood. Yi Tian said that although the four of them were guarding the Alliance capital on the surface, they were actually the enforcers and supervisors of the four major districts of the Alliance capital. Then, the heaven-defying divine techniques and weapons in their hands must be stronger than Li Fuyuan and the others. Otherwise, how could they deter the people of the four major districts? This was good news. The four of them were faster than Li Fuyuan and the black-robed man, so they would definitely catch up. He was also very curious. Who was the person who attacked him? Chapter 3177. Sure enough, after a while, Qin Fei Yang sensed the aura of the black-robed man and Li Fuyuan, and then he could see them clearly. Eldering stared at the black-robed man and said in a deep voice, "Can you tell who he is from his figure?" The other three old men shook their heads. "His aura is also very strange. I think he deliberately changed it." One of the old men said, "Yes. But no matter who he is, since he dares to make trouble in the Alliance capital, we must not let him have it easy." Eldering said coldly and caught up with Li Fuyuan in less than 10 breaths. "You are also here." Li Fuyuan immediately greeted the four of them. "Yes." Eldering nodded and said, "Take good care of your son and Mo Yuancheng. Leave this person to us." After saying that, Eldering left Qin Feiyang and Li Yuandao and chased after the black-robed man. The other 3 old men followed closely behind. Damn Li Fuyuan! The black-robed man cursed in his heart. If Li Fuyuan hadn't killed him halfway, he would have escaped without a trace. Don't make a futile struggle. Stop, Eldering said. The distance was getting closer and closer, but the black-robed man turned a deaf ear and looked ahead, looking for a way out. However, Eldering and the other 3 were faster than him, and the entire Kanglan Snow Mountain was enveloped by the enchantment set up by the leader. Where could he escape to? His eyes were extremely flustered. Whoosh! Finally, Eldering and the other 3 caught up with the black-robed man and surrounded him. The black-robed man had to stop, and his eyes were extremely gloomy. Who the hell are you? Eldering shouted. Get lost! The black-robed man roared and threw a punch at Eldering with all his strength. Can you recognize the voice? Qin Feiyang asked. It's very strange. I can't recognize it. Li Yuandao shook his head. Humph. Eldering didn't back down. He snorted and slapped. Boom. When the fist and palm met, both of them were forced back a step. At the same time, the other 3 old men joined forces to attack the black-robed man. One of the old men tore off the black robe on the black-robed man's body, revealing a muscular body. The other old man also smashed the mask on the black-robed man's face, revealing a middle-aged man's face. It's you. Eldering was stunned. Not bad. It's me. The black-robed man spoke. His voice was different from before, and this was his original voice. This voice, Li Fuyuan and his son's expressions froze. What is it? Qin Feiyang frowned. Li Yuandao said in surprise. He is Zhang Diyuan. Zhang Diyuan? Dongqing City Lord? Zhang Sanbao and Zhang Santian's father? Qin Feiyang was stunned. That's right, it's him. Li Yuandao nodded. Although Zhang Diyuan's back was to them, and they couldn't see his face, Zhang Diyuan's voice was very familiar to everyone in the East District. Zhang Diyuan slowly turned around and looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang finally saw Zhang Diyuan's true appearance. He had a muscular body, a square face and a little beard. At this moment, he looked extremely gloomy. Why did you sneak attack me? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. What do you think? Zhang Diyuan asked. Because of Zhang Sanbao and Zhang Santian? But you should know that they were the ones who came to provoke me first. And you, as the former Dongqing City Lord, actually sneak attacked a disciple. Aren't you afraid of being ridiculed by others for doing such a despicable thing? Qin Feiyang shouted. I just want to kill you. How hateful. To think that I, a grand perfected juggernaut, actually failed in my sneak attack. Zhang Diyuan's face was full of resentment. Eldering shouted. You're unreasonable. Follow us to see the Deputy Alliance leader immediately. Zhang Diyuan's expression immediately panicked. If you dare to resist, we'll kill you on the spot. Eldering said mercilessly. Zhang Diyuan looked around in a panic, still looking for a way out. But suddenly his eyes flashed. He looked at Eldering and the others and shouted. I have something to say. What is it? Eldering frowned. There's something wrong with this Mo Yuan's identity. Zhang Diyuan stared at Qin Feiyang and said. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. There was indeed something wrong with his identity, but how did this person see through it? That's not right. He didn't seem to have revealed any flaws. Calm down, don't be scared. At the same time, Elder Ing and the others, Li Fuyuan and his son, were stunned when they heard this. Li Yuandao glanced at Qin Feiyang, then looked at Zhang Diyuan and said jokingly, You said that there's something wrong with Brother Mo's identity? Then tell me, what's wrong with him? There's something very wrong with him. All of you should know that he's from the outside world. How could a brat from the outside world have a legendary grade divine artifact? And he doesn't know about the legendary grade divine artifact. He also has a legendary grade divine art, and a legendary grade auxiliary divine art. Isn't that a problem? Zhang Diyuan roared. What? Eldering and the others looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. So that's what you're talking about. Qin Feiyang came to a realization and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. In my opinion, he's a spy sent by the Demon Palace. Because other than the Demon Palace, No other force has the ability to give him so many divine artifacts. Zhang Diyuan shouted. Just based on this, you're saying that he's from the Demon Palace. Aren't you being too hasty? Eldering frowned. Then tell me, how do you explain these legendary grade divine artifacts? Zhang Diyuan asked. Eldering couldn't help but look at Qin Feiyang again. To be honest, it was a little unbelievable that he had so many divine artifacts. One of the old men said, How about this? Let's go see the Vice Alliance leader and make things clear in front of him. All right. Eldering nodded. Mo Yuanyuan, do you dare to go? Zhang Diyuan stared at Qin Feiyang. I don't want to go. It's troublesome. Qin Feiyang chuckled. See, he's guilty. Zhang Diyuan suddenly seemed to have caught Qin Feiyang's weakness and shouted. Elder Ing and the others looked at each other and couldn't help but frown. Guilty? Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Your imagination is too rich. What I want to say is that we don't have to go all the way to the Deputy Alliance leader and let him come here personally. Let the Deputy Alliance leader come here personally? Elder Ing and the others were stunned. This kid must be out of his mind. Who was the Deputy Alliance leader? He was the second in command of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Who would dare to let the Deputy Alliance leader come here personally? Brother Mo, don't talk nonsense. This is disrespectful. You'll be punished. Li Yuandao pulled Qin Feiyang's clothes and sent a voice transmission. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and took out the holy voice transmitting stone. Everyone immediately looked at him suspiciously. Was he going to send a message to Yi Tian? Buzz. As the holy voice transmitting stone woke up, an old figure quickly appeared. What? It's the Deputy Alliance leader. This guy has established a contract with the Deputy Alliance leader? Li Fuyuan, Zhang Diyuan, and Eldering and the others were all shocked. There are so many people here. What's going on? The Deputy Alliance leader glanced at Elder Ing and the others, then looked at Qin Feiyang and asked. I was ambushed on my way back to the Hall of the Exalted, Qin Feiyang said. What? The Deputy Alliance leader suddenly became angry and shouted. Where are you now? I'll be right there. Qin Feiyang told the Deputy Alliance leader his location. Before Elder Ing and the others came back to their senses, the Deputy Alliance leader's shadow dissipated. When they came back to their senses, the group of people suddenly looked at each other. What was going on? As soon as he heard that this kid was ambushed, the Deputy Alliance leader wanted to come in person without hesitation. Since when did Mo Yuanyuan have such an important place in the Deputy Alliance leader's heart? At the scene, only Li Yuandao knew. It must have something to do with the 6 laws that this person mastered. But he only knew one thing and not the other. The 6 laws were only secondary. Now, Qin Feiyang's master-disciple relationship with the Deputy Alliance leader was the main thing. After a while, a figure came through the air and landed in front of Qin Feiyang, asking gloomily, Who ambushed you? It's him. Qin Feiyang pointed at Zhang Diyuan. Zhang Diyuan? The Deputy Alliance leader was slightly stunned and immediately understood that it must be to avenge Zhang Sanbao. He shouted, You're really stubborn. It seems that I have to kill you. Sir, please calm down. I have something to say. Zhang Diyuan hurriedly knelt on the ground. Speak. The Deputy Alliance leader said. This Mo Yuanyuan has a legendary level heaven-defying divine object. There must be something wrong with his identity. Please investigate. Zhang Diyuan said. And the Deputy Alliance leader was stunned. What did he mean? Sir, this is what happened. Elder Ing and the other 3 stepped forward and explained the situation in detail. Hearing this, the Deputy Alliance leader looked at Zhang Diyuan in shock. Sir, think about it. He is an unknown person. How could he have such a heaven-defying divine object? So he is definitely a spy sent by the Demon Palace. You must not be fooled by him. Zhang Diyuan exclaimed. Haha. Qin Feiyang suddenly laughed out loud. Elder Ing and the others couldn't help but look at Qin Feiyang. Sorry, I can't hold it in anymore. Let me laugh for a while. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and laughed so hard that he was convulsing with joy. Stop laughing. What's so funny? Why don't you just tell them? The Deputy Alliance leader glared at Qin Feiyang. I just want to keep a low profile. Qin Feiyang chuckled. It's true that you want to keep a low profile, but you still have to say what needs to be said to avoid causing misunderstandings. The Deputy Alliance leader's face darkened. Master, you are right. I will pay attention in the future. Qin Feiyang nodded. What? He called the Deputy Alliance leader as his master. What's going on? Elder Ing and the others looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Did they hear it wrong? You heard it right. Moyuan has long been my disciple. The Deputy Alliance leader said faintly. What? Everyone was dumbfounded. Qin Feiyang had always claimed to be his disciple. However, the disciples of the Hall of the Exalted basically claimed to be their disciple when facing the giants, so they didn't think much of it. So now, they suddenly realized that the disciple Moyuan claimed to be was fundamentally different from the other disciples of the Hall of the Exalted. Moyuan and the Deputy Alliance leader had a true master-disciple relationship. Li Yuandao was also dumbfounded. Needless to say, Li Fuyuan was completely flustered. Chapter 3178. He was actually the disciple of the Vice Alliance leader? What was going on? There was no news of such a big matter. If he had known about this earlier, how would Li Fuyuan dare to offend Qin Feiyang? He would have to worship him like an ancestor. He finally understood who he had offended. Unfilial son. Why didn't you tell me about such an important matter? Li Fuyuan was very angry and vented his anger on Li Yuandao. I don't know either. Li Yuandao smiled bitterly. When did this person become the Vice Alliance leader's disciple? You don't know? Could it be that the blockade order you mentioned was not referring to this? Li Fuyuan was surprised. No. The blockade order refers to another matter, but I definitely can't say anything about it. If not, our Li family will be finished. Li Yuandao transmitted his voice, his tone extremely solemn. Li Fuyuan's heart trembled. What could be more important than this kid being the Vice Alliance leader's disciple? Disciple? Lord, why don't we know about this? Elder Ing and the other three were also puzzled. There wasn't even the slightest bit of news. It happened a long time ago. As for those heaven-defying divine objects of his, they were all given to him by me. The Vice Alliance leader said indifferently. Is that so? The four of them nodded in realization. No wonder Qin Feiyang was smiling so happily. So that was the case. How is it? Are you still saying that I'm a spy of the Demon Palace? Qin Feiyang looked at the pale Zhang Diyuan. Zhang Diyuan was naturally even more so. He was completely scared silly. He originally thought that he could fight for a chance of survival from these heaven-defying divine objects, but he never expected that these heaven-defying divine objects were all given to him by the Vice Alliance leader. And what was even more terrifying was that he was actually the Vice Alliance leader's disciple. Even the elders had to be polite to the Vice Alliance leader's disciple, let alone an ordinary person like him who had already been demoted to the East City Lord. He was the same as Li Fuyuan. It was too late for regrets. If he had known earlier, even if this kid killed his entire family, he wouldn't have dared to take revenge. I'm sorry, suddenly. He followed on the ground and begged. That was because he knew that he would only be able to survive if Qin Feiyang spoke. Otherwise, given the Vice leader's temper, he would never let him off. It could be said that the Vice Alliance master was even more overprotective than the 10th elder. Fated, you deal with it yourself. If he dares to have any ulterior motives, just kill him. The Deputy League Lord looked at Qin Feiyang and waved his hand, shattering Zhang Diyuan's sea of qi. Zhang Diyuan didn't even dare to breathe loudly. He could only endure the pain. Immediately after, the Vice Alliance leader turned around and disappeared without a trace like a bolt of lightning. Spare me. Zhang Diyuan looked at Qin Feiyang, pleading endlessly. As expected, the Vice Alliance leader had given him the power of life and death. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered as he looked at Elder Ing and the other three. He smiled and said, Many thanks to the four seniors. Another day, this junior will personally go to the Union capital to thank you. Sure. The four of them chuckled. His attitude towards Qin Feiyang had also undergone a 180-degree change. What a joke. Who wouldn't give face to the Vice Alliance leader's personal disciple? Then this junior won't see you off. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and smiled. No need to see me off. Just go back to the East City to have a look when you have time. Eldering smiled faintly. Then he exchanged glances with the other 3 old men. After that, he left sensibly. Father, let's go too. Li Yuandao was also a shrewd person. He tugged at Li Fuyuan's clothes. Go. Li Fuyuan was stunned. Can't you see? He wants to talk to Zhang Diyuan alone. If we stay here, we will be in the way, Li Yuandao secretly said. But Li Fuyuan was anxious. Now you regret it. Li Yuandao shook his head and sighed. He said, Don't worry, let's leave first. When we return to the Hall of the Exalted, I will slowly find a chance to apologize to him. Okay then. Li Fuyuan nodded and then looked at Qin Feiyang with a flattering look. He smiled and said, Nephew, then we will leave too. Remember to come visit us more often when you have time. After that, without waiting for Qin Feiyang's response, he hurriedly left with Li Yuandao. Nephew? Qin Feiyang turned to look at Li Fuyuan's back. He could not help but feel a trace of contempt in his eyes. This person was indeed a snob. After knowing his relationship with the Vice Alliance leader, he immediately changed his attitude. But that was another matter. This time it was really thanks to this person. Otherwise he would not have been able to keep Zhang Diyuan. Mo Yuan. No. Brother Mo, let's talk nicely. As long as you let me go, I am willing to do anything. Seeing that everyone had left, Zhang Diyuan hurriedly began to curry favor. I was waiting for you to say that. Qin Feiyang chuckled and asked, Are you sure you are willing to do anything? He was not afraid of Zhang Diyuan at all now. Because his Sea of Qi had been destroyed, Zhang Diyuan could only use his divine soul. Although Zhang Diyuan was a paragon dominator and was much stronger than him, a mere divine soul would not be able to kill Qin Feiyang, who had a legendary treasure. Moreover, with his identity as the Vice Alliance leader's disciple, Zhang Diyuan did not dare to have such thoughts. I am sure. Zhang Diyuan nodded repeatedly. Good. Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. He scanned the surroundings. With a wave of his hand, the two appeared in a stone room. That's right. This was a cultivation room in the ancient castle. This is. Zhang Diyuan looked around suspiciously. This is my spatial treasure. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. So small. Then its grade must not be high. Brother Mo, let me go and I will give you a heaven-defying spatial treasure. Zhang Diyuan hurriedly smiled. A heaven-defying spatial treasure? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. Zhang Diyuan nodded. Is it very powerful? Qin Feiyang asked mockingly. Zhang Diyuan was stunned. He did not know how to answer. A heaven-defying spatial treasure was even rarer than a heaven-defying divine weapon. Every one of them was a rare treasure. However, in front of this person, they did not seem that important. After all, as the Vice Alliance leader's personal disciple, what could he not have? Don't resist. This is your only chance to live, Qin Feiyang said. Then he formed a seal with both hands. An enslavement seal appeared and entered Zhang Diyuan's head at lightning speed. What is this? Zhang Diyuan was bewildered. You will know in a while, Qin Feiyang said indifferently. Actually, Zhang Diyuan already knew what it was. After all, he was a paragon dominator. What had he not seen? However, he did not dare to resist. Because if anything were to happen to Qin Feiyang because of his resistance, then the Vice Alliance master would definitely not let him off. Soon, the enslavement seal was completed. This is an enslavement seal. It can ignore distance and instantly erase your divine soul. It can also peek into your inner thoughts. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. What? Zhang Diyuan was shocked. Is this for real? It can even peek into one's inner thoughts? Qin Feiyang said. If you think it's fake, you can give it a try. I dare not. Zhang Diyuan quickly shook his head. Wait a minute. Is it real or fake? Isn't it what I am thinking? This person actually knew it immediately. Then who is it? Can he really peek into my inner thoughts? He suddenly became listless, and all his thoughts disappeared. Because in the face of such a control secret technique, there was no secret at all. Swish. Qin Feiyang waved his hand again, and brought Zhang Diyuan to the glacier outside. He said with a faint smile, Go, bring me all the spirit veins and crystal veins in your house. All of them? Zhang Diyuan's expression froze. Yes. All of them. Qin Feiyang nodded. Can't you leave some for me? After all, there are so many people in my Zhang family. They all need cultivation resources. Zhang Diyuan's face was sad. Do you think you are still qualified to talk about conditions now? Qin Feiyang frowned. Hearing this, Zhang Diyuan was immediately dejected. He nodded and said, Yes, I will go now. Go, I will wait for you here. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Zhang Diyuan turned around and flew toward the alliance capital. Looking at Zhang Diyuan's back, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. After all, he was a perfected sovereign. He really couldn't bear to kill him. If he kept him, he would definitely be valuable in the future. At the very least, when he encountered fatal danger, he could use him as cannon fodder and make him self-destruct. The self-destruction of a perfected sovereign would be extraordinary. About a while later, whoosh, a figure broke through the air and arrived. This person was Li Yuandao. He said with a smile, Brother Mo, we are really fated to meet several times in a day. You call this fate? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. He looked at him with a smile that didn't seem like a smile. This person was obviously here to look for him. If he returned to the Hall of the Exalted, he wouldn't have passed through this direction. Because when he was chasing Zhang Diyuan, they had already missed each other. Li Yuandao's expression was slightly awkward. After saying this, even he felt a little awkward. On the way here, I met Zhang Diyuan. Why did you let him go? Li Yuandao changed the topic to cover up the awkwardness. After all, he is a perfected sovereign. Moreover, he has contributed greatly in managing the East City. There is no need to take his life over such a small matter. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Brother Mo is really a magnanimous person. I admire you. Li Yuandao cupped his hands and smiled. Let's get straight to the point. Tell me your purpose of looking for me, Qin Feiyang said. You saw through me. Li Yuandao smiled embarrassedly. He then cupped his hands and said, I am here to apologize to you on behalf of my father. Brother Mo, please forgive my father's previous rudeness. Here are 15,000 spirit veins and 15,000 crystal veins. Please accept them. With that, he waved his hand. Spirit veins and crystal veins immediately appeared in the void. So many? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Back then, he only asked for 10,000 spirit veins and 10,000 crystal veins. Now he actually added 5,000 more. Not much at all. I only hope that Brother Mo doesn't mind. Li Yuandao waved his hand. Qin Feiyang laughed and said, Actually, when I left, I had already thought of how to deal with your father. Li Yuandao was shocked. Because I knew that your father would definitely come looking for me again. I originally planned to increase the price to 20,000 spirit veins and 20,000 crystal veins. However, on account of your father's help in intercepting Zhang Diyuan, I will not pursue the matter. I will also accept these spirit veins and crystal veins. We are even now. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. The 15,000 spirit veins and crystal veins immediately disappeared into the void. Chapter 3179. Brother Mo, you're such a straightforward person. Li Yuandao also smiled. Now that the grudge was settled, he could finally breathe a sigh of relief. As for the position of the East City Lord, he did not dare to mention it now. As long as he could reconcile with this person, it would be perfect. Don't worry, your father won't run away from the position of East City Lord. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Brother Mo, you. Li Yuandao looked at Qin Feiyang in a daze. Don't look at me like that, because I don't need to say anything now, Qin Feiyang said. What do you mean? Li Yuandao was stunned. Your father helped to intercept Zhang Diyuan, and Master knows this, so when choosing the candidate for the East City Lord, he will definitely prioritize your father. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. I see. Li Yuandao nodded and then smiled. But I still have to thank Brother Mo. Okay, you go back to the Hall of the Exalted first. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Okay. If I have the chance to get some good tea, I will definitely send it to you. Li Yuandao nodded. Okay. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Then I'll go. Li Yuandao smiled and turned to fly toward the Hall of the Exalted. However, when he was out of Qin Feiyang's sight, he immediately took out the voice transmission stone and told Li Fuyuan the good news. Li Fuyuan was naturally very happy when he heard this. Fortunately, he had chased after him, and it was also thanks to Zhang Diyuan that he had made such a scene. Otherwise, there would be no chance to make up for it. Qin Feiyang waited for about half an hour before Zhang Diyuan finally came back. When Zhang Diyuan took out the crystal vein and soul vein, Qin Feiyang was also shocked. There were actually more than 50,000 crystal veins and more than 50,000 soul veins. Is this all? Qin Feiyang asked. This, Zhang Diyuan stammered. Qin Feiyang immediately peeked into his inner thoughts and quickly understood what was going on. This was not all. Zhang Diyuan had left a few thousand spirit veins and crystal veins at home. He had left them for his clansmen out of selfishness. It's all right. It's just a few thousand. I won't pursue the matter. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. There were about 110,000 spirit veins and crystal veins in total. A few thousand spirit veins were just a fraction of the total. Thank you. Zhang Diyuan was extremely grateful. At the same time, he was even more certain that the other party could really see through his inner thoughts. Because he hadn't mentioned the thousands of spirit veins and crystal veins that he had left behind, but this person knew everything. Didn't that mean that no matter what he was thinking, he couldn't escape this person's prying eyes? At this moment he was truly convinced and became obedient. Alright, go back. If you have the chance, you can go outside and get me more spirit veins and crystal veins. Of course, I won't mistreat you. You'll benefit from it. Qin Feiyang said lightly. Alright. Zhang Diyuan nodded respectfully. After establishing the contract bridge, he turned around and left silently. Deep down, however, he was pondering. Since he had already entered the Hall of the Exalted, did he still lack resources? He actually wanted spirit veins and crystal veins. What a weirdo. Qin Feiyang also turned around and returned to the Hall of the Exalted. When he returned to the Hall of the Exalted, he entered the cave residence, sealed the door, and went to the ancient castle to cultivate in seclusion. Outside, although he had experienced these things, the fact that he was the disciple of the deputy leader had not been exposed, because Elder Ing and the others did not dare to publicize it. At that time, they all heard Qin Feiyang say to keep a low profile, so in order to avoid causing Qin Feiyang's displeasure, they pretended not to know about it. In the blink of an eye, outside more than 500 years had passed. More than 500 years, for experts at the imperishable realm and the sovereign realm, was just a matter of a snap of the fingers. But for the Black Tortoise world, which had 1,000 years in a day, it was already a very long period of time. After careful calculation, it was estimated to be more than 180 million years. In other words, according to the time in the Black Tortoise world, Qin Feiyang had already lived for more than 100 million years. But according to the time outside, he was still very young. After these years of bitter cultivation, he finally stepped into the complete imperishable realm. However, the improvement of the major power of law was not too obvious. The fourth profound of the power of law was like a hurdle that was difficult to cross, let alone the fifth profound. But he did not lose heart. This kind of thing you can't force. Sometimes, if you are lucky, you can comprehend the fifth profound in an epiphany. And if you are unlucky, then you may be trapped in the third or fourth profound for the rest of your life. Anyway, 70% hard work, 30% luck. Next. Naturally, he could not wait to take the Dragon Phoenix Divine Pill to raise his cultivation to the complete imperishable realm, and then take the Supreme Clear Fortune Pill to open the door of potential. At this point, he had finally stepped into the complete imperishable realm. Now he could concentrate on comprehending the fifth profound of the Law of Thunder. Why the Law of Thunder? Of course, it was because the Law of Thunder had already comprehended the fourth profound, and the other power of law were all at the third profound. So comprehending the Law of Thunder could step into the half-step sovereign realm faster. When he broke through to the half-step sovereign realm, he would finally have a certain amount of power to protect himself in the sky cloud world. However, what was the fifth profound of the Law of Thunder? These years, while he was cultivating, he had also been pondering the Law of Thunder, but what was in front of him was like a fog, and he had no clue at all. Wait. He remembered that when he comprehended the fourth profound, it was because of the fire dragon's tribulation. Then, could he continue to use the heavenly tribulation to comprehend the law of thunder, and then comprehend the fifth profound? After thinking for a long time, Qin Feiyang also thought of this shortcut. But this tribulation was not something that could be encountered every day. Take the people around him for example. Except for him, Frenzy, the five-clawed golden dragon, and the fire lotus, no one else had passed the tribulation. From this, it could be seen that the appearance of the heavenly tribulation was not so easy. I wonder how the two ancestors are now. Qin Feiyang suddenly thought of Qin Batian and Lu Xingyang, and immediately got up and walked out of the cultivation room. Just as he was about to leave the ancient castle, a trace of surprise crept into his eyes as he looked at the two cultivation rooms. It was the cultivation room where the white-eyed wolf and Frenzy were. The aura emitted by these two fellows had actually reached the great perfection imperishable stage. That's fast. They're not lagging behind at all, Qin Feiyang muttered. However, compared to Frenzy, he was more worried about the white-eyed wolf. This fellow, he did not see it comprehend the power of law. So how did it step into the dominator stage? After thinking for a while, Qin Feiyang shook his head. The white-eyed wolf was not worried, so why should he be? Besides, the white-eyed wolf could not be looked at with ordinary eyes now. Just the fact that it could deprive the fighting soul, and the innate divine power of one's cultivation was enough to shock anyone. Immediately, Qin Feiyang left the ancient castle, glanced at the medicinal field outside, and walked straight to Qin Baishan's courtyard and shouted, "Ancestor!" Soon, Tantai Li walked out from inside and said with a smile, "You're out." Tantai Li's cultivation had already reached the great perfection imperishable stage, and looking at her aura, she was not far from the great perfection imperishable stage. Qin Feiyang nodded, ran up and said with a smile, "Great-grandmother, you're really getting younger and younger. If we stand together, people who don't know will definitely think that we're brother and sister." "Stinking brat, your mouth is smeared with honey." Tantai Li rolled her eyes at him and asked, "Why are you looking for your ancestor?" "I haven't seen him for too long, so I miss him a little." Qin Feiyang smiled. "We live together every day, what's there to miss?" Tantai Li was speechless, and then said with a smile, "Your two ancestors are not here." "Not here?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. Many years ago, the two of them had already left the Devil's Land, and went to the secular world to gain experience. Tantai Li nodded. They still went to gain experience with their cultivation? Are they crazy? Qin Feiyang was stunned. How can you say that? Is there any respect for the elders? They went out to gain experience because they have been unable to comprehend the fifth profound, so they want to go to the secular world to have a look. Perhaps they can find the answer there. Tantai Li explained. So that's the case. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization. Don't disturb them. A few years ago, I secretly went to see them. They were like two little old men, wandering around all day, free and very comfortable. Tantai Li said. Then aren't you afraid that your ancestor will flirt outside? Qin Feiyang laughed. How dare he? Tantai Li frowned. Ha! Qin Feiyang laughed dryly and said, all right then, I'll go out for a walk too. You can't get the fifth profound either? Tantai Li was stunned and asked. It's too difficult. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed, saying, perhaps it is as the two ancestors have expected. Building a cart behind closed doors won't work. I have to go out more and take a look. All right then. I don't know how to comfort you. In short, relax and don't put too much pressure on yourself. Tantai Li smiled. Qin Feiyang nodded. As a result, he also began to wander around the Black Tortoise realm. However, he changed his identity and concealed his cultivation level, as if he was an ordinary person. However, as thousands of years passed in the Black Tortoise realm, he didn't gain anything at all. It seems that I still have to find a shortcut. One day, he stood on the peak of a mountain, sighed softly, and left the Black Tortoise realm. Walking out of the cave, he glanced at Zhao Xiaojin and Yi Tian's cave residence. After pondering for a while, he suddenly thought of the Deputy Alliance leader. How could he forget about him? As a peak sovereign, He definitely had a deep understanding of the power of law. He made a prompt decision and took out the voice transmission divine stone to send a message to the Deputy Alliance leader. Because now he still didn't know where the Deputy Alliance leader lived. After the Deputy Alliance leader told him where he lived, Qin Feiyang immediately set off to find the Deputy Alliance leader. The Deputy Alliance leader's residence wasn't in the Hall of the Exalted, nor was it deep in the mountains or forests. Instead, it was in the central city of the Alliance capital. In other words, the Deputy Alliance leader had always been personally overseeing the Alliance capital. The central city district was filled with magnificent mansions. However, somewhere, there was a different kind of courtyard. This courtyard covered an area of 200 to 300 feet. It was a simple courtyard with an old 2-story wooden building. This place was not even as big as the outhouse of those mansions. Hence, in this bustling central city, this small courtyard was particularly different. And this was the place where the Deputy Alliance leader usually recuperated. Of course, if he was dealing with matters, he definitely wouldn't be here. Chapter 3180. Master. Qin Feiyang landed in front of the courtyard and shouted at the small wooden house inside. Then he looked at the small courtyard with a trace of surprise in his eyes. He didn't expect that the dignified Deputy Alliance leader would live in such a simple place. Logically speaking, people who could live in such a place were basically indifferent to fame and fortune, and had no desires. Could it be that he was wrong and the Deputy Alliance leader really did it purely for Wang Hui? No. Before he found out, he couldn't be careless. Because there was no lack of people who were good at disguising themselves in this world. Come up. The Deputy Alliance leader walked out from the second floor and stood on the balcony, looking at Qin Feiyang with a smile. The balcony was 3 meters wide and 6 to 7 meters long. There were chairs, tea tables, tea sets, and so on. Qin Feiyang entered the courtyard and stepped on the balcony. He said with a smile, "Master, your place is pretty good. It's just a shabby courtyard. What's so good about it?" The Deputy Alliance leader shook his head and smiled. He pointed to a chair and said, "Have a seat." "Master, I don't agree with you. Look at this world. Usually, only those who like to be pretentious and ambitious can build gorgeous palaces. And the real unworldly experts all like the simplest life." Qin Feiyang smiled. "Then according to what you said, I'm an unworldly expert, right?" The Deputy Alliance leader was stunned. "Obviously." Qin Feiyang chuckled. "Don't flatter me." The Deputy Alliance leader glared at him. While making tea, he asked, "Why did you suddenly come to find me?" "I missed you, so I came to see you," Qin Feiyang said with a smile. The Deputy Alliance leader was stunned and said with amusement, "It's funny. We've only met a few times in total. Although you're right, I'm afraid you don't know my situation, Master. I've been alone since I was young, so now that I've acknowledged you as my master, I feel that I have one more family member by my side. It's very warm and caring." Qin Feiyang sighed. "Alone? Didn't I hear that you have an elder brother?" The Deputy Alliance leader was stunned. "Yes, but this big brother of mine only knows how to wander around all day. It's hard to even get together with him." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "I see." The vice leader smiled and said, "Then if you like it here, you can come here often to play." "That's great. I wish I could stay here and serve Master every day." Qin Feiyang was overjoyed. "Haha." The vice leader smiled in relief. This disciple was quite filial. He then said, "I'm not so old that I need someone to serve me. Besides, there's a time array in the Hall of the Exalted. You have to stay there and train hard." "Isn't a time array very simple to deal with, Master?" Qin Feiyang giggled. "You don't say. The time array is really difficult for Master, because Master hasn't grasped the law of time. We'll have to depend on Old Man Qi for that," the vice leader said. "Hall of Famers?" Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Yes. He grasped the law of time, and the time array in the Hall of the Exalted was set up by him. The vice leader nodded. "Then he's amazing." Qin Feiyang's face was full of admiration. "What's wrong? Look at you. You seem to regret not acknowledging him as your master?" The vice leader was displeased. No. He's very powerful, but Master is definitely more powerful than him. After all, you're the vice leader. Qin Feiyang hurriedly waved his hand. Haha. Boy, you have good taste. Tell me, why are you looking for master? The vice leader laughed, took a sip of tea, and asked. Qin Feiyang also took a sip of tea and said with a smile, Master, look at my cultivation. The vice leader was stunned. He looked at Qin Feiyang and a trace of surprise gradually appeared in his eyes. He exclaimed, Peak imperishable stage? Yes. I just broke through. Qin Feiyang nodded. That's not right. When you first entered the Alliance capital, you were only at the minor imperishable stage. The vice leader frowned. Qin Feiyang was secretly shocked. This old man had actually investigated him in secret. That's right. When he first entered the Alliance capital, he was indeed at the minor imperishable stage. Then, he went into seclusion in Zhao Xiaojin's house and broke through to the great imperishable stage before the trial began. However, not many people knew about this. However, it was definitely impossible to hide it from the vice leader. After all, with his status, it was too easy for him to investigate a person. Aren't you a little too fast? The vice leader looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Master, don't you know my character? I've always liked to keep a low profile, so before entering the Alliance capital, I didn't show my true cultivation at all. At that time, I was already at the great imperishable stage. And these years, I've been cultivating in seclusion in the Hall of the Exalted. With a 500-year time array, I smoothly broke through to the great imperishable stage. Then, I took the Dragon Phoenix Divine Pill and directly stepped into the great imperishable stage. Qin Feiyang smiled. That's more like it. The vice leader nodded and then asked. Then you came to find me now to ask about the power of law. That's right. I haven't been able to figure out the fifth profound of the Thunder Law, so I want to ask for your guidance. Qin Feiyang said. The fifth profound. The Vice Alliance Master sipped his tea and muttered to himself. After a while he shook his head and said, I haven't grasped the law of lightning, so I don't know much about it. However, I do know a person whose comprehension of the law of lightning is the best in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Who? Qin Feiyang quickly asked. Great Elder. The vice leader said. Great Elder? I don't know him at all. Will he give me guidance? Qin Feiyang was a little hesitant. Can you be a little confident? You're my disciple now. What's a mere elder to you? Even if he's the great elder, he has to be polite to you. The vice leader said proudly. That's not good. As a junior, it's better to be humble. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Haha. The Vice Alliance Master was stunned for a moment, then he laughed and said, So you know how to respect the old and love the young. This is indeed similar to Tian'er. However, Master wants to tell you that in a faction, especially a super faction like our Rogue Cultivator Alliance, you must show your arrogance. Only then will the other party fear you. I'll remember. Qin Feiyang nodded. Wasn't this teaching him to be arrogant because of his talent and abuse his power? He couldn't do such a thing. In front of an old senior, especially one who was worthy of respect, he had to put on a good attitude and humbly ask for guidance. He also finally understood why the vice leader liked Yi Yuan more than Yi Tian. It was because Yi Tian was humble, and Yi Yuan was arrogant and overbearing. Although I don't understand the law of thunder, the laws in the world are actually more or less the same. The main thing is to comprehend. Building a cart behind closed doors definitely won't work. You have to walk around more and see more. The myriad of life, the myriad of things in the world. All of them contain the epitome of the laws. However, when I said see, I don't mean to see with the eyes, but with the heart. Because the eyes can be deceived by illusions, but the heart won't. If the heart is clear, it will naturally be clear. The vice leader smiled faintly. If the heart is clear, it will naturally be clear. Qin Feiyang muttered. In other words, as long as the heart is clear and not confused, it will naturally be clear? There's something that I've been looking for an opportunity to ask you. The vice leader suddenly spoke. What is it? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. You've comprehended the fourth profound of the law of thunder, the law of war. I heard from them that you've comprehended the second profound, and the law of slaughter has comprehended the third profound. Then, what profound have you comprehended for the law of force, law of wind, and law of light? The vice leader was suspicious. Take a guess. Qin Feiyang chuckled. The vice leader's face darkened and he said, if I have to guess, they should have just been comprehended. Why? Perhaps I've already comprehended the second or third profound meaning of these laws. Qin Feiyang said. If that's the case, then I've really picked up a big bargain. Besides, you've comprehended the fourth profound of the law of thunder, the third profound of the law of slaughter, and the second profound of the law of war. This is already unprecedented, so I don't believe that you've comprehended the profound divine ability for the other three laws. The vice leader shook his head. Then, if I've really comprehended it, won't you have to give me a few supreme treasures? Qin Feiyang chuckled. If you've really comprehended it, I'll give it to you. You're not modest with just a few words of praise. The vice leader rolled his eyes. Don't go back on your words, Qin Feiyang said. The vice leader was stunned. Looking at this kid's attitude, could it be that he had really comprehended it? Watch carefully. Qin Feiyang chuckled mischievously and immediately displayed the third profundities of the various laws one by one. The vice leader was dumbfounded. The teacup in his hand dropped, but he didn't even realize it. What kind of monster is this? He's so young, but he's so terrifying. Even Yi Tian can't compare to him at all. Master, how is it? Qin Feiyang smiled proudly. Haha. The vice leader laughed loudly. This time he really picked up a treasure. Where's the promised supreme level heaven-defying divine object? Qin Feiyang chuckled. Hearing this, the vice leader's laughter came to an abrupt stop, and his expression became unnatural. You're the vice leader, you can't go back on your words, Qin Feiyang said. Ahem. The vice leader coughed dryly and said with an embarrassed smile. Well, actually, our rogue cultivator alliance doesn't have many supreme treasures. After all, they're second only to the sovereign divine weapon. But don't worry, when I have the chance to get one or two, I'll definitely give it to you. You're really going back on your words. Qin Feiyang looked at him speechlessly. Who said I'm going back on my words? I don't have any on hand now. The vice leader's expression became more and more awkward. Qin Feiyang didn't say anything and just looked at him quietly. The vice leader became more and more unnatural. He coughed dryly and said, Well, aren't you going to ask about the fifth profound of the law of thunder? Hurry up and find the Grand Elder. He's also in the central city. Go out and look for him along the main street. His mansion is less than half a mile away. All right then. Then I'll go find the Grand Elder first. You have to keep your promise. Qin Feiyang got up and said disappointedly. You have to keep your promise. Go on. The vice leader waved his hand and smiled. Then this disciple will take his leave. Qin Feiyang bowed and saluted. He then turned around and walked out of the courtyard. However, he suddenly stopped and turned around to look at the vice alliance head. Master, this disciple will remember everything. Don't forget. I won't forget, I won't forget. The vice leader laughed. All right then, I'll come to pay my respects to you another day. After Qin Feiyang said that, he held back his smile and left. This old man was quite fun. The vice leader couldn't help but wipe his sweat. How could he be so foolish as to promise him a supreme treasure? A divine object of this level, even in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, was very precious. However, it was really lucky to find such a monstrous disciple. If Old Man Qi knew about this kid's true talent, he would probably be so angry that he wouldn't be able to sleep for a few days. Thinking of this, the vice leader couldn't help but laugh. Chapter 3181. On the street. Qin Feiyang stood at a crossroad, looking around in confusion. Which street? Although the deputy leader said that if he walked down the street, less than half a mile away, he would reach the residence of the Great Elder, but he did not say in which direction. Not to mention the central city, he was not even familiar with the East City. How could he find it? Right. It's only half a mile away. Can't I just release my divine thoughts to find it? Qin Feiyang slapped his head and immediately released his divine sense, which rolled out in all directions. Soon, he saw mansions after mansions. Each mansion was extremely large and luxurious. Above the gate of one of the mansions, There were 3 words written on it. The Great Elder. Swish. Following closely, Qin Feiyang took a step forward and appeared in front of the gate. Who is it? There were 2 servants at the gate, and they immediately looked at Qin Feiyang with vigilance. Why are you so nervous? Is there anyone who dares to make trouble in the Great Elder's mansion? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Are you Mouyuan? The 2 servants were stunned. Yes. I have a matter to discuss with the Great Elder. Please inform him of my arrival. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and smiled. The 2 looked at each other, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Then you wait here for a moment. After saying that, one of them turned around and ran into the mansion. Qin Feiyang waited quietly. As for the other servant, he curiously sized up Qin Feiyang. He heard that Mouyuan had a good relationship with young Master Yi Tian, but he did not look outstanding. His appearance was average, and his temperament was average. How could such a person be valued by young Master Yi Tian, and call him a brother? These servants did not know that Qin Feiyang had mastered 6 kinds of laws, and had become the disciple of the deputy leader. So in their opinion, the reason why Qin Feiyang was famous was entirely because of Yi Tian. Of course, for Qin Feiyang, he was too lazy to explain, because there was no point in fussing about these things. Suddenly, the servant looked behind Qin Feiyang with a respectful expression. In the meantime, Qin Feiyang also seemed to have sensed something. He turned around and looked behind him. He saw a green-clothed female walking towards them with 2 servant girls. This green-clothed woman was naturally beautiful. She was tall and slender, and her fine black hair was like a waterfall. Her skin was sparkling and translucent, and her facial features were extremely exquisite. Furthermore, this woman's age was similar to his. However, his cultivation was not ordinary. Great circle imperishable realm. Miss, you're finally back. The servant hurriedly went up to greet him, overjoyed. Yes. The green-clothed girl nodded and smiled. Immediately after, she looked at Qin Feiyang with a trace of suspicion in her eyes and asked, Who is he? What's the situation? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. Was there anyone in the alliance who didn't recognize him? From the way the servant addressed her, this green-clothed woman should be the first elder's descendant. Logically speaking, he should have recognized him. Miss, his name is Wuji. He's a new hall of the exalted disciple. That servant explained. Wuji? The green-clothed woman was stunned. Her eyes were immediately filled with curiosity. She said, I've heard a lot about you. Is that so? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Although I've never met you, I've heard of your name long ago. You helped Xiaojin kill Feng Wanyun, and the 10th elder is still kneeling in Cloudsea City. The green-clothed woman said. Xiaojin? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. From the way she addressed him, it seemed that she had a good relationship with Zhao Xiaojin. He asked suspiciously, You and Zhao Xiaojin? We're sisters. Besides, I'm also a hall of the exalted disciple. The green-clothed woman said. Sisters? And a hall of the exalted disciple. Qin Feiyang was a little confused. Since she was a hall of the exalted disciple, she should know what he looked like. Judging from your puzzled face, you should be wondering why I don't know what you look like. Because I've been training outside all these years and only returned today. As for you, I heard from Brother Yi Tian. The green-clothed woman said. So that's how it is. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization. Wait a minute. Judging from how she addressed Yi Tian, it seemed that she had a good relationship with him. No. It should be said that she had a good relationship with Yi Tian. After all, one of them was the grandson of the vice leader, and the other was the descendant of the grand elder. They knew each other since birth. As for Zhao Xiaojin, this woman must have known Yi Tian through him. If that was the case, then her relationship with Yi Tian was probably not ordinary. Because of the relationship between Zhao Xiaojin and Yi Tian, almost no one knew about it in the past. Since this woman knew about it, it meant that Yi Tian trusted her very much. I heard from Brother Yi Tian that you're very strong. Why don't we have a spar? The green-clothed woman's eyes flashed as she smiled. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. When she said this, there was obviously a trace of battle intent in her eyes. Is she a battle maniac? He smiled and said, "There's no need for that." "Are you looking down on me because I'm a woman?" The green-clothed woman frowned. "Absolutely not. It's just a feeling. There's no need for that." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "Cut the crap. Take this." The green-clothed woman's eyes turned cold. She immediately slapped her palm towards Qin Feiyang. "There's really no need." Qin Feiyang took a step forward and calmly avoided it. There was a faint smile on his face. "Are you a man or not? You don't even dare to accept a woman's challenge. Don't make me despise you." The green-clothed woman said angrily. "Then you can despise me." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. The green-clothed woman was stunned. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. The servant and the two servant girls were also somewhat stunned as they looked at Qin Feiyang. Others wanted to despise him, but he didn't care at all? Was he deliberately pretending to be free and easy? Or did he have no temper? "Miss, you're back." At this time, the servant who went to report before ran out. When he saw the green-clothed woman, his face was suddenly filled with surprise. The green-clothed woman nodded. Then she looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Mo Yuan, are you going to fight or not?" "I'm not going to fight." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "Coward." The green-clothed woman looked at him with disdain. Then she turned around and led the two maids into the mansion without looking back. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Women were really troublesome. "Young Master Mo, don't mind her. Our miss has such a temper." The servant walked to Qin Feiyang and smiled apologetically. "It's okay. What did the great elder say?" Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. "He asked me to take you in immediately," the servant said. "Then lead the way." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "Please come in." The servant stepped aside and stretched out his hand. There was a bit of respect in his expression, because when the great elder heard that Mo Yuanyuan came to see him, he was very surprised. Then he looked like he didn't dare to neglect. Even the great elder was like this, let alone a servant like him. After a while, under the servant's lead, Qin Feiyang came to the door of a reception room. And right at the top of the reception room, an old man with white hair sat on the main seat. "Disciple Mo Yuanyuan greets the great elder." Qin Feiyang stood at the door and bowed. "You can leave." The great elder waved his hand to the servant. "Yes." The servant responded respectfully and then said, "By the way, Lord Miss is back." The great elder was slightly surprised, and then a trace of joy appeared on his face. He asked, "When did she come back?" "Just came back." Just outside, there seemed to be a little friction with Mo Yuanyuan. The servant said truthfully. "A little friction?" The great elder was surprised. "It's not a big deal." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. "So it's like this." The great elder nodded and waved to the servant. "You can leave." The servant turned and left. "Why are you still standing at the door? Come in." The great elder looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile. Qin Feiyang smiled and entered the reception room. "Have a seat." The great elder pointed to the seat next to him. Qin Feiyang glanced at the seat and said with a smile, "This is not good. How can disciple be on the same level as the great elder? Just sit when I ask you to. Why are you being so polite?" The great elder shook his head and smiled. Then it would be impolite for disciple to refuse. Qin Feiyang walked to the side of the great elder and sat down. This old man really didn't expect that a monster like you would appear in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance this time. You have comprehended 6 types of law force in the immortal realm. More importantly, you have also comprehended the 4th profound of the law of thunder. If it didn't happen in front of my eyes, this old man wouldn't dare to believe it. The great elder held the teacup and drank while shaking his head and sighing. Qin Feiyang had already prepared a cup of tea in front of him. He smiled and said, "Great elder, no matter how powerful disciple is, I can't compare to a senior like you. You're being modest. I can't compare to you when we're the same age. Have some tea. This is specially prepared for you." The great elder pointed to the teacup. "Thank you." Qin Feiyang picked up the teacup and took a sip. This was also a good tea. The great elder asked curiously. At that time, this old man was in the meeting hall. "I saw that the vice leader and the Hall of Famers both wanted to accept you as a disciple. Did they go to you?" Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Then did you agree? The great elder seemed to be looking forward to it. If he didn't agree, then he would have a chance. Who wouldn't want to accept such a genius as a disciple? This disciple agreed to the vice leader. Qin Feiyang said. He had seen all kinds of people, so he could naturally see the great elder's thoughts at a glance. Therefore, he didn't deliberately mystify and directly admitted it. I see. The great elder nodded, but there was a trace of disappointment on his face. He asked with a smile. Then why are you here this time? I heard from Master that you've also mastered the law of thunder? Qin Feiyang asked. Yes. The great elder nodded. Qin Feiyang put down the teacup and stood in front of the great elder. He bowed and said, Great elder, I hope you can give me a few pointers. So you're here for the fifth profound? The great elder nodded and then said with a smile, Sit down and talk. Qin Feiyang returned to his seat again. Just now, I heard that you had a little conflict with this old man's granddaughter. What happened? The great elder looked at him suspiciously. She's your granddaughter? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. This girl can't stay idle since she was young. She often goes out and stays away for hundreds or thousands of years. This old man is also very helpless in my heart. Say a girl running around outside all day. What kind of scandal is that? The great elder shook his head. Elder, this disciple doesn't agree with you. Men and women are equal. If men can go out and explore, so can women. Qin Feiyang smiled. The great elder was startled, before he nodded and said, All right, I'm being stubborn. Tell me about the conflict. Actually, it's nothing. Qin Feiyang briefly explained the situation. This girl is still so competitive. The great elder shook his head helplessly, and said with an apologetic smile, Don't mind her. Actually, this girl is quite kind. No, this disciple doesn't mind at all. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Chapter 3182. It's good that you didn't take it to heart. I believe that you will definitely become friends in the future. The grand elder smiled and said, Then tell me, how did you comprehend the law of thunder in the past? I comprehended the law of thunder when I was transcending a tribulation, Qin Feiyang said. Transcending a tribulation? The grand elder was stunned and asked in surprise, What tribulation? It's the tribulation that came when I broke through to the imperishable realm, Qin Feiyang said. What? You broke through to the imperishable realm, and the tribulation came? The grand elder was shocked. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. What's going on? This is the first time I've heard of a tribulation coming when breaking through to the imperishable realm. The grand elder looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Qin Feiyang guessed, maybe it has something to do with me becoming a god. Becoming a god? The grand elder was stunned. Yes. Before I became a god, the inner demons were born. But I had a good relationship with the inner demons, so I couldn't bear to kill them. So, I used battle to prove my Tao and forced a breakthrough. That was my first tribulation, Qin Feiyang said. Inner demons? Prove your Tao through battle. When the grand elder heard this, he looked at Qin Feiyang as if he was looking at a monster. Was he a human or a ghost? One must know that with the inner demons, one definitely couldn't become a god. But this boy not only did he do it, but also grew to such a level. It was really shocking. Most importantly, this boy was actually unwilling to kill the inner demons? How good was their relationship? What about your inner demons now? The grand elder asked. He sacrificed himself to save me. Qin Feiyang sighed. He saved you? And he sacrificed himself? The grand elder was in disbelief. Were the inner demons so kind? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded and said, This disciple's life was saved by him. All right, this is an eye-opener for this old man. You can even influence the inner demons. Seems like you're not a bad person. The first elder nodded with a smile and said, Continue. Qin Feiyang nodded. He calmed himself down and said, The first, second, and third profundities of the law of thunder are very simple. It didn't take long for me to comprehend them. However, the fourth profundities are a little difficult. Simple? When the first elder heard this, he almost vomited blood. As someone who had grasped the law of lightning, He naturally knew the first, second, and third profundities. Back then, he had spent over 100 million years to comprehend it. Yet, in the eyes of this child, it could only be described as simple. Wasn't he purposely trying to piss them off? The first elder exhaled and asked, "How did you comprehend the fourth profound?" "This is all thanks to the fire dragon." Qin Feiyang smiled. "The fire dragon?" The first elder was slightly taken aback. He asked, "The fire dragon that came out of the trial ground with you?" "Yes. Back then, when this disciple and Zhao Xiaojin encountered it in the trial ground, it happened to be transforming and encountered some trouble. This disciple kindly helped it, and even helped it transcend its tribulation. While helping it transcend its tribulation, this disciple used the heavenly tribulation to comprehend the fourth profound." Qin Feiyang smiled. "I see. No wonder it helped you so much." The first elder nodded in realization. "What's its identity in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance?" Qin Feiyang was curious. "You'll find out in the future." The first elder smiled and said, "It seems that you should know that the heavenly tribulation is a shortcut for the law of lightning." "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Unfortunately, there are too few people who transcend their tribulations in this world. This kind of shortcut can only be encountered by chance and not sought." The first elder shook his head regretfully. "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded and sighed. "If there's no shortcut, then this road will be long. When this old man comprehended the fifth profound, it took me more than 200 million years." The first elder said. "So long?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Is it? For the fifth profound, this is already considered very fast. Some people can't comprehend the fifth profound in their entire lives. Of course for you, it might be a little too long. After all, you're a monster." The first elder chuckled. Qin Feiyang smiled awkwardly. "All right then. This old man will tell you the hidden mysteries of the fifth profound. As for how much you can comprehend in the end, it will depend on your comprehension." The first elder smiled. "Thank you, first elder." Qin Feiyang was very grateful. The first elder waved his hand and closed the door. He also set up a barrier to prevent anyone from disturbing them. At the same time, "What did you say?" Grandpa is in the living room to see Mo Yuanyuan. In front of an exquisite attic, a lady in green frowned and looked at the two servants. "Yes, Mississippi," the two servants nodded. "This Mo Yuanyuan is not an important guest. Why does Grandpa need to see him in the living room?" The lady in green was puzzled. "I heard that he has a good relationship with young Master Yi Tian," the two servants said. "No matter how good their relationship is, can it be compared to my relationship with Brother Yi?" The lady in green was unhappy. She turned around and quickly went to the living room. However, she found that the door was closed, and there was even a barrier. "The door is closed? What's going on?" The two maidservants also had a suspicious look on their faces. "Grandpa." The lady in green shouted a few times at the living room, but there was no response. "Miss, stop shouting. This barrier must have a soundproof effect." The two maids said. "This is too much. My granddaughter is back, but she didn't even come to ask. She's actually hiding in there with an outsider." The lady in green was unhappy. "Sneaking? Miss, you can't say that. They must be discussing something important. Why don't we go back and wait?" The two maids said. "Why should we go back? Just wait here. I'd like to see what they are doing inside." The lady in green snorted and sat on the steps at the door. She pouted and felt aggrieved. "Cough, cough. Miss, why are you sitting on the ground? Can you pay attention to your image? Get up." The two maids hurriedly said. "Shut up. I'm very angry now. If you keep talking, I'll beat you." The lady in green glared at the two. The two shrank their necks and then looked at each other. They stood behind the lady in green with a helpless expression. They waited until late at night. Creak. Finally, the barrier finally disappeared. The door also opened. The first elder walked out, but Qin Feiyang didn't. At the moment, he was sitting in the living room. He lowered his head and pondered for a while. Sometimes he was happy and sometimes he frowned. And the first elder looked at the lady in green sitting on the steps and was slightly stunned. he asked. Girl, what are you doing here? You still know to come out? The lady in green stood up angrily and said, I've been waiting for you here for a whole day. After saying that, she ran to the living room. However, the first elder reached out and stopped her. Then he waved his hand. The door closed and another barrier was set up. What are you doing? The lady in green frowned. Don't disturb him now. The first elder smiled faintly. Why? This is my home. Can't I go in? The lady in green looked at the first elder with a bitter face. Of course you can, but you can only go in after he comes out. The first elder chuckled. Then he patted the head of the lady in green and said with a smile, Let's go. Go back with Grandpa, and tell him what you have been doing outside all these years. The lady in green pouted and looked at the two maids. You two go and rest too. But at the same time, she winked at the two maids. Oh, okay. The two maids understood and hurriedly turned around and left. Then let's go. The lady in green looked at the first elder and giggled. The great elder smiled and quickly disappeared into the night with the green-clothed woman. Not long after the first elder left, the two maids quietly ran back and hid not far away, monitoring the closed door. 1 day, 2 days, until half a month later, the door of the living room finally opened again in the middle of the night. Qin Feiyang stood in front of the door and looked at the night outside. There seemed to be a trace of exhaustion on his face. He's coming out. The two maids had been monitoring the living room. When they saw Qin Feiyang coming out, their eyes lit up. Qin Feiyang didn't notice at all. He stepped out of the door, but he bumped into the barrier set up by the first elder. The barrier was invisible, but when he bumped into it, it was revealed in the void. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. Then he suddenly understood and murmured, This first elder is not bad. It was obvious. He set up this barrier because he was afraid that someone would disturb him. Whoosh. In the next moment, the first elder appeared in front of the barrier. With a wave of his hand, the barrier disappeared. He then smiled and said, How is it? Sigh. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. I only comprehended 10 to 20%. What? You only comprehended 10 to 20% in half a month. The first elder looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. What kind of freak was this? Although his explanation was very detailed, it was still not something that ordinary people could understand, because in the past he had also guided others. Not to mention half a month, even hundreds of thousands of years, or millions of years, they could not comprehend 1/10,000th of the essence. But this young man could comprehend 10 to 20% in half a month. The difference between 10 to 20% and 1/10,000th was huge. His comprehension ability was too terrifying. The worst thing was that this young man looked disappointed. Wasn't this infuriating? Thank you for your guidance, Elder. I will work harder and try to comprehend the fifth profound as soon as possible. Qin Feiyang bowed and said. Then I'll look forward to your performance. The first elder smiled faintly. Then I'll take my leave first. Qin Feiyang cupped his fists. The first elder nodded. Qin Feiyang took a step forward, stepped into the sky, and quickly disappeared without a trace. What a monster! What a monster! The first elder looked at the night sky where Qin Feiyang disappeared and exclaimed. This time, the deputy leader had really picked up a treasure. In time, this young man would definitely become the pillar of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Chapter 3183. Mississippi in an elegant and quiet courtyard. The two maids quickly ran into the attic and looked at the woman in green sitting in the hall. How is it? The woman in green asked. He's out. The two maids said. He's finally out. Let's go. The woman in green got up and walked outside quickly. Don't go. He's gone. The two maids hurriedly said. He's gone. The woman in green was stunned. Yes. The two maids nodded. Why didn't you stop him? The woman in green looked at the two of them with dissatisfaction. With Lord here, we don't even dare to show up, let alone stop him. The two maids shook their heads helplessly. What did he say to Grandpa? The woman in green was suspicious. It was too far. I didn't hear clearly. The two shook their heads. Well, this guy must have returned to the Hall of Fame. Let's leave it at that. Anyway, I'm going back to the Hall of Fame tomorrow. The woman in green sat in front of the tea table weakly. After waiting for so many days, she actually waited in vain. However, she was more and more curious about Qin Feiyang. Why did Grandpa value this person so much? However, Qin Feiyang didn't return to the Hall of Fame. He was very confused now. He wandered aimlessly in the Kanglan Snow Mountain. The wind was cold and piercing, but he didn't feel it at all. In his mind, he had been pondering about the fifth profound of the Law of Thunder. The great elder said a lot, and he concluded that only by seeing through the origin could one get to the end. It should mean that only by seeing through the origin of the Law of Thunder could one comprehend the fifth profound. But where was the origin? This was the question he had been puzzling over. The laws of the world all came from this world, and the power of law represented the origin of the world. All living things in the world couldn't leave the origin. Wait, origin? Could it be that the origin of the Law of Thunder was the origin? Or was it the power of the origin? Unknowingly, it was dawn. Qin Feiyang looked at the glacier in front of him and couldn't help but be stunned. Wasn't this the place where he left the Kanglan Snow Mountain? How did he come here unknowingly? After he came back to his senses, he turned around and left. However, he suddenly stopped and pondered for a moment before he turned around and scanned the area ahead. Very soon, he saw a figure on one of the icy peaks. This person was Second Xing. Second Xing sat cross-legged on the ice peak. His entire being was like a stone statue, not moving at all. "My lord." Qin Feiyang flew up and cupped his hands in salute. Second Xing opened his eyes and was slightly stunned. Then he got up and bowed to Qin Feiyang. "You are?" Qin Feiyang was taken aback. "You are now my lord's personal disciple, and I am my lord's subordinate. I should be the one paying my respects to you." Second Xing said with a smile. "No, no, no. This junior can't afford it." Qin Feiyang waved his hand repeatedly. Second Xing was a perfect dominator, a terrifying existence who had grasped 5 types of laws. Even though he was the Vice Alliance Master's disciple, he could not afford to be arrogant in front of this person. He is indeed very similar to young Master Yi Tian, friendly and courteous. Second Xing muttered to himself. His impression of Qin Feiyang deepened once again. He asked, "Where are you going?" "I don't know either. I was just pondering some things and unknowingly came here. Since I'm here, I might as well go out for a walk." Qin Feiyang smiled. "What are you pondering that has you so engrossed in it?" Second Xing was suspicious. "It's the profound meaning of laws." Qin Feiyang smiled. "The profound meaning of laws?" Second Xing was slightly taken aback. He sized up Qin Feiyang, a hint of shock gradually creeping into his eyes. He had actually broken through to the perfect imperishable realm. No wonder he was so obsessed with the profound meaning of laws. It turned out that he wanted to break through to the half-step dominator level. The 5th profound meaning is a huge hurdle. You can't rush it. There's a saying that goes, when the conditions are right, success will follow naturally. You have to relax and not give yourself pressure. Second Xing reminded. "Thank you for your advice." Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and smiled. "All right then, I'll send you out. Be careful, it's not Mount Kanglan outside. There's no one to protect you." Second Xing reminded him as he flew toward the barrier. "I will." Qin Feiyang nodded. After opening the barrier, Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and thanked him. Then he turned around and stepped into the air step by step. He's so talented and so hardworking. It's hard not to achieve something in the future. Looking at Qin Feiyang's back, a hint of a smile flashed across Second Xing's eyes. Compared to those playboys in the Alliance capital, this kid was really much stronger. Swoosh. All of a sudden, a burly figure landed silently beside Second Xing and asked, "Second brother, what are you thinking about?" "Big brother?" Second Xing's expression froze. He looked at the person and said, "Why are you here?" That's right. The person who came was Second Xing and Third Xing's big brother, Xingda. "I've been ordered by Sir to protect Mounun in secret." Xingda indeed. Second Xing nodded. "All right, I'll go first. If Sir Deputy Alliance Master asks, I'll go out with Mounun." After Xingda gave his instructions, he turned into a black shadow and disappeared at the end of the snowy mountain. He actually got Big Brother to protect him personally. Seems like Sir really thinks highly of him. Second Xing muttered. Back to Qin Feiyang. After leaving Mount Kanglin, he continued to walk aimlessly. Noon. He entered deep into the mountains and saw a village located in the mountains. The village wasn't small. There were about a few thousand families. However, their cultivation wasn't strong. The most powerful one was only immortal. He took a look at the village and was about to leave when he suddenly noticed an old man sitting by a river fishing. Qin Feiyang had a sudden impulse and landed beside the old man. You are? The old man was in his 60s. His hair was white, but he was full of energy. He looked suspiciously at the unfamiliar young man who suddenly appeared. Old man, don't be nervous. I'm just a passerby. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly, showing a trace of kindness. The old man breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, Our village is isolated from the rest of the world. It's fate that you can come here. You look a little lost. Are you struggling with something? Qin Feiyang looked at the old man in surprise. Don't look at me like that. Although I'm not as strong as you, I'm much older than you. So naturally, I've seen more things than you. The old man laughed with a hoarse voice. That's true. Qin Feiyang nodded and stood beside the old man. Looking at the slowly flowing river, he asked, Then, old man, in your opinion, what does thunder represent? Thunder? The old man was stunned. He pointed to the sky and asked, Are you talking about the thunder that makes rain? Qin Feiyang was stunned. He nodded with a smile and said, I guess so. The old man thought for a while and said, This thing, in my opinion, should be considered as punishing evil. Punishing evil? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. Isn't there a saying? You unfilial son, be careful not to be struck by lightning. Isn't this punishing evil? After the old man said that, he smiled and said, It's just my opinion. Don't take it seriously. It's okay. Actually, what you've said does make some sense in this aspect. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. What do you mean by that? It's just nonsense. Don't mind it. Why don't we sit together? I have a fishing rod here. I can lend it to you. The old man grabbed a fishing rod next to him and handed it to Qin Feiyang. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. Fishing could allow one to focus even more. When the mind was focused, the heart would be calm. When the heart was calm, some things would naturally be understood. He grabbed the fishing rod and moved a stone next to the old man. He used it as a stool and sat on it. After hanging the bait, he quietly began to fish. Although the old man and the young man didn't speak, the scene seemed very harmonious. Xing, who was standing on the opposite mountain peak, looked at Qin Feiyang's actions with a hint of admiration in his eyes. In this era, regardless of whether it was the older generation or the younger generation, they were all impatient. Very few people were willing to sit down and fish, because to them, it was a complete waste of time. Time passed quickly. The sky gradually darkened. Qin Feiyang didn't catch a single fish, but he didn't feel disappointed. On the contrary, there was a smile on his face. Because he sat quietly for the whole afternoon and didn't think about anything, his heart was completely calm. The old man, on the other hand, had a good harvest. 2 big fish, both half a meter long. Young man, it's getting late. Why don't you stay in the village with me for the night? The old man put away his fishing rod and looked at Qin Feiyang. Thank you, old man. But I've already disturbed you for the whole afternoon. I don't dare to continue. I'll take my leave first. Qin Feiyang clasped his hands. All right then. We'll meet again if fate wills it. The old man smiled and didn't force him. We'll meet again if fate wills it. Qin Feiyang smiled and handed the fishing rod back to the old man. He then turned and left silently. What a strange little guy. The old man shook his head and took the fishing rod and the 2 big fish, disappearing into the night. We'll meet again if fate wills it, however. Qin Feiyang stopped at the peak of a mountain and looked at the old man's back, pondering over this sentence. This sentence was often heard and often said. In the past, he felt that this was a very common sentence. But at this moment, when he heard it, there seemed to be a different feeling. This seemed to be a kind of carefree, a kind of casual nature. Everything was up to fate. There was no need to force or hope. As expected, The more ordinary something seemed, the more likely it was to hide some truth. It was just that no one usually paid attention to it. Good luck. Qin Feiyang looked at the old man's back and smiled. He then turned and left. Although spending an afternoon with the old man didn't provide any enlightenment or help to his fifth profound, such a subtle change in his state of mind could be considered as a kind of sublimation. Another half a month passed by. On this day he came to Cloud Sea City. The newly built Cloud Sea City was as prosperous as before. It was even more prosperous than before, because there were many people watching the show now. The 10th elder of the Rogue Cultivators Alliance had always been unapproachable, but now he was kneeling in the square in the center of the city. This was a scene that was hard to come by in a lifetime. Now that it was in front of him, he definitely couldn't miss this opportunity. Therefore, people from all over the eastern continent came to Cloud Sea City almost every day for sightseeing. This caused Cloud Sea City to be more lively than before. Chapter 3184. This time he did not change his appearance and used the identity of Mo Yuan Yuan. Therefore, when he entered the city, he attracted everyone's attention. Isn't that Mo Yuan Yuan? He dares to come to the city so brazenly? Isn't he afraid of the 10th elder and Wu Sun Yuan's family taking revenge? He's got guts. Everyone discussed softly. But Qin Feiyang acted as if he did not hear these discussions, and walked alone on the street. Gradually, he came to the square in the center of the city. The 10th elder Wu Sanyuan, Zhao Yunhai, and Zhao Tianyun were still kneeling on the square. One had to know that 500 years had passed since the beginning. In other words, the four of them had been kneeling here for 500 years. If it was a mortal, he would have knelt here long ago. However, although the four of them had good cultivation, it was not good to kneel for 500 years. Not only were their bodies tortured, but their minds were also devastated. They had long lost their former glory. Especially the 10th elder, he was extremely dispirited, like a walking corpse. There was no color in his eyes. Qin Feiyang walked into the square. Third Xing was still supervising here. Seeing Qin Feiyang's arrival, Third Xing opened his eyes and nodded at Qin Feiyang with a smile. Qin Feiyang also smiled at Third Xing, then looked at the 10th elder and the others. Qin Feiyang's appearance had already caused a commotion, so the four of them immediately knew. However, at this moment, it was as if they were numb. After taking a glance at Qin Feiyang, they lowered their heads and looked at the ground with lifeless gazes. 500 years of torture, 500 years of devastation. If it was anyone else, they would also feel numb. Qin Feiyang looked for a while and said, "Your grandson Feng Wanjian is also dead." What? The 10th elder suddenly raised his head and stared at Qin Feiyang. "Yes, I killed him. He wanted to avenge you, but unfortunately he didn't have the strength. But don't misunderstand, I didn't use any tricks. I killed him openly in the fighting arena," Qin Feiyang said lightly. When the 10th elder heard this, he could not help but smile sadly. Now that his two grandsons were dead, he felt even more hopeless. Of course, his hatred for Qin Feiyang also grew stronger. "Actually, you can't blame me. Regardless of whether it's you or those two brothers, you're all courting death." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "Don't be so smug. After doing so many evil deeds, retribution will come sooner or later." The 10th elder glared at him with hatred. "What I did was evil." Qin Feiyang smiled in astonishment. Had this old man not come to his senses yet? Back then, if not for Feng Wanyan being arrogant and despotic, how could they have formed a grudge? Afterwards, if Feng Wanyan hadn't bribed Zhang Sanbao and the others to kill them in the trial grounds, would this hatred have deepened? Later on, if Feng Wanyan hadn't killed Zhao Eryong, Wang Shui, and Zhao Yang in the divine prison, if the 10th elder hadn't instigated Wu Sanyuan and the Zhao family to poison them, would they have been so unscrupulous? This was cause and effect. There must be a cause and effect. All of a sudden, Qin Feiyang seemed to have a deeper understanding of the law of cause and effect. Whether it was him and Zhao Eryong, or him and Zhao Xiaojin, or Feng Wanjian, Zhang Sanbao, Zhang Santian, or even him and Yi Tian, the deputy alliance leader Li Yuandao, Li Fuyuan, Zhang Diyuan, they all had an inevitable karmic relationship. Therefore, everything in this world, all living things in the world, couldn't escape karma. For example, the food chain in this world. Ants were very weak, right? Any animal could eat them, such as frogs and lizards. However, frogs and lizards would become food for stronger animals. For example, elephants, tigers, lions, and even humans. These were all at the top of the food chain. However, when elephants, tigers, lions, and even humans died, their corpses would become food for ants and other insects. Therefore, everything in this world had to go through a cycle. That was cause and effect. Gradually, Qin Feiyang's body emitted a powerful aura. However, he was completely unaware of this and seemed to have entered a wonderful state. What's going on? Everyone was bewildered. There was no lack of dominators present. For example, Third Xing was a perfected dominator. However, at this moment, he actually felt a terrifying pressure from Qin Feiyang. Even the 10th elder felt the same. There was a trace of bewilderment in his eyes. This seemed to be an epiphany. Moreover, the aura that emerged from Qin Feiyang's body seemed to be a type of law power. I see, the fourth profound is the wheel of karma. Qin Feiyang suddenly muttered unconsciously. A translucent full moon condensed in front of him. Wheel of karma. Third Xing's gaze trembled. At the same time, eldest Xing, who was hiding in the dark, also had a face of disbelief. Could this be the fourth profound of the law of karma, the wheel of karma? He was actually hiding a type of law power, and it was the law of karma. Eldest Xing certainly knew that Qin Feiyang had mastered 6 types of law, but he never expected that this kid still had a trick up his sleeve. If this kid hadn't entered an epiphany and unconsciously exposed the law of karma, who knew how long he would have hidden it? 7 types of law, and he had already comprehended the fourth profound of the law of thunder and the law of karma. This was too heaven-defying. This kind of monster had never appeared in the sky cloud realm since ancient times. Qin Feiyang finally woke up from the state of epiphany, but when he saw the wheel of fire in front of him, there was a trace of a smile in his eyes. But then his expression turned cold. He looked at Third Xing and the others, then looked at the people in the square on all sides. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed that the law of karma couldn't be hidden anymore. Mo Yuan, I really don't understand. What kind of monster are you? Third Xing came back to his senses and looked at Qin Feiyang helplessly. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Others don't know, but I have long known that you revealed the power of law in the Hall of the Exalted. 7 types of law. When I saw you, I couldn't wait to kill myself. Third Xing was helpless. How could there be such a freak? Before suddenly becoming a half-step dominator, he had already mastered 7 types of law. Among them, there was even the strongest type of law, the law of karma. The saying of comparisons are odious was indeed true. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and looked at the 10th elder. I have to thank you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to comprehend the fourth profound of the law of karma so quickly. The 10th elder's face was gloomy. As a thank you gift, I'll give you a quick death. It can also be considered as completely cutting off the karma between us. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. With a clang, the sky demon spear appeared. Qin Feiyang grabbed the sky demon spear and directly pierced the 10th elder's forehead. With a scream, the 10th elder died, of course. What are you doing? Third Xing was shocked. Qin Feiyang acted too quickly. He couldn't react in time to stop him. As for the 10th elder, his sea of qi had already been destroyed. Moreover, Third Xing also put on a bracelet made of soul-sealing magic stone. So even if his spirit was still there, he couldn't fight back at all. At the same time, First Xing also appeared. He rushed to Qin Feiyang's side in one step, and looked at the 10th elder who was glaring angrily. His face was full of shock. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but look at First Xing too. Big brother, why are you here too? When Third Xing noticed First Xing, he couldn't help but be stunned and asked suspiciously. Big brother? Qin Feiyang was stunned and frowned. You're First Xing? You're spying on me? No. I'm not spying on you. I'm under orders to protect you secretly. First Xing quickly explained. Protect me? Qin Feiyang was stunned. It seemed that he was under orders from the vice leader. Why did you kill him? First Xing frowned. What's the point of keeping such a person alive? Qin Feiyang said calmly. But he. First Xing frowned. The 10th elder was indeed in the wrong, but he wasn't someone a disciple like you could kill. If you want to kill him, you have to get the vice leader or even the leader to personally give the order. For a disciple like you to make such a decision without permission, you're breaking the rules. Qin Feiyang looked at the two brothers and said, "This matter won't implicate the two of you. If Master blames me, I will bear the responsibility." "Can you bear the responsibility?" First Xing rolled his eyes at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "He was originally a person who deserved to die. I believe that Master is a righteous person and won't really blame me." "All right, he's already dead anyway." First Xing sighed helplessly. He should have kept an eye on this brat at all times. However, there was nothing he could do. Previously, when this brat revealed the law of karma, it was indeed too shocking. Since the 10th elder is dead, there's no need to keep these three alive. Let's kill them all. First Xing looked at Third Xing and said, "All right." Third Xing nodded his head. "Spare us. Brother Mo, you're a magnanimous person. Please be merciful and spare us. We've already knelt here for 500 years. No matter how deep our sins are, it's time to pay them back." Wu Sanyuan and the other two hurriedly kowtowed and begged for mercy. Their foreheads were bleeding. "Did I say I'm going to kill you?" That's what First Xing said. "So, I can't help you." Qin Feiyang said plainly. "You can. Help me say something. They'll definitely listen to you. Brother Mo, what we did to little Jean was indeed our fault. However, we've truly repented. Please give us a chance. We promise that we'll be honest in the future." Zhao Yunhai and Zhao Yuntian begged with tears and snot. Their faces were filled with despair. However, Qin Feiyang was indifferent. Third Xing didn't show any mercy. He directly killed the three of them, and took back the 4 bracelets made from the soul-sealing magic stone. They're finally dead. If it were up to me, they should have been killed long ago. That's right. If such people are left alive, they'll become a scourge sooner or later. The surrounding crowd sneered. Obviously, Third Xing's action was very satisfying. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, "First Xing, Third Xing, you've seen it too. This is the will of the people. Therefore Master won't blame us." Hearing this, the two brothers looked at the reaction of the surrounding crowd and couldn't help but smile bitterly. This kid really knew how to seize the opportunity. The people's will was undoubtedly the most important. As long as he could get the people's will, it was equivalent to getting the world. Therefore, as long as he reported the truth here to the Vice Alliance leader and the higher-ups of the Alliance, he believed that these big shots would understand. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.